A direct quote from Ray Tanner this morning. I'm humbled and honored that I have had the great fortune to be a part of this wonderful university, and that will continue, said Tanner, who is in his 13th year at the helm of USC athletics. Tanner goes on to say, for a while now, I have thought that there's going to come a time for Carolina to get a new athletics director, and the president and I have had those conversations. There was interest for me to remain at the university. I agreed to stay in a new role because of my passion for this university, the city, and this state. That comes from the current but soon-to-be former athletic director Ray Tanner Diesel, who they announced this morning. The University of South Carolina announced in the Board of Trustees that Ray Tanner will be stepping down from his athletic director's role at the end of the 2024 calendar year, and at the end of the 2024 fall semester, the university will begin a search for a new AD. Huge news, Diesel, out of South Carolina this morning.
And Gamecock fans rejoice. You know that video that you always see? It's a big crowd of people, and there's a huge big screen TV on the wall, and it's like rolling images, and then bam, one pops up, and the crowd all loses their minds.
Yeah,
that's Gamecock fans today. They are so excited that Ray Tanner is getting the hell out of the way. I mean, if I had $1 for every Gamecock fan who's called and texted in to this station over the past couple of years, bitching and moaning and complaining about Ray Tanner and the decisions that he's made. Oh, they appreciate the national titles he won in baseball, but everything after that, if I had $1 for every one of those, man, I'd quit this job. I'd be a rich man.
So I think I agree with you. I think the majority of South Carolina fans are excited, but the main question was why? Why announce this now with a major game, just over 24 hours away? Oh, by the way, College game day is in your town, and you just choose to announce this on the Friday before. Again, it was his decision, and I believe that. I talked to a few people in the know in Columbia this morning, and Tanner, who is 66 in his 13th year as AD Diesel, it was his decision. However, the timing of this with a huge game looming tomorrow was very interesting for me.
No, it makes total sense. It makes total sense. Sure, they don't have the new hire in place yet. They haven't announced who that's going to be. I'm sure that's going to take a while, right? Unless they've secretly already done all that, and we don't know the answer to that question. But South Carolina is going to be on national TV tomorrow morning. South Carolina is going to have a 3-hour billboard for their university plastered all over the country and the college football loving world. You get to couple that with a new exciting athletic director down the line. All of a sudden, people are willing to throw money at this university. Fans are going to come out of the woodworks and start donating money. I mean, it's going to be great for South Carolina. You know, you get game day, you win the game, you announce a new AD who, let's be real, athletic director's job primarily is to handle people in suits and raise money for your programs and figure out how to divvy up funds within your program. His job is to be a money man, whoever this new guy is. And I'm telling you, if you look great on TV, you win that football game, there's going to be a lot of money rolling in. People are going to be excited.
Welcome into Wire to Wire. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson on this Friday edition of Wire to Wire. Tanner will remain again as AD through the fall semester, and the national search will then begin for his successor sometime, I would assume, from what I'm reading, around Christmas. Once a new AD is found, Diesel, Tanner will become a senior advisor to the president through June the 30th, 2028. Tanner's new roles will be to aid development and fundraising, which he's good at, and to help the new AD with his transition to USC. In 2028, the university, or if the university president and Tanner agree to continue, he can be extended. He will be paid his current salary of $1.175 million through June 30th, 2025, and then his salary will be dropped to $987,500 through June 2026, and then he'll be making about $800K for the rest of the contract. The new AD search, when it begins at the end of the fall semester. I don't think, Diesel, it'll take a long time. If they have time now to kind of, you said it, they may already know who they want. I think there's a lot of names out there that Gamecock fans are throwing out, but they may not take. I don't anticipate when this happens. I do not anticipate it taking long for South Carolina to find their AD, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. But, we just saw South Carolina had Chance Miller go to Coastal Carolina, and he was what a lot of people believe to be a guy that could really take that job when Ray Tanner does decide. Also, Jeff Crane, I don't know if you know that name or not, Gamecock fans, but Jeff Crane was on your staff in previous years and went to Memphis and has done an incredible job at South Carolina as a deputy assistant to AD, went to Memphis, did an incredible job there, and is now back at South Carolina in that same role. So that's interesting. But I do want to hear, Diesel, from the Tolo 71307, start your text the word fan if you're a Gamecock fan. If Gamecock fans agree with what you said, is this a good day for Gamecock fans? I believe for the majority it is.
Yeah, I think this new hire, knowing the fact that Ray Tanner is going to stay on, Ray Tanner is going to be involved with fundraising. I think they're looking for an opportunity to find somebody that can just build excitement, to build interest, to be creative, to come up with new ways to make money down the line. Ray Tanner's done a good job fundraising, and he gets to essentially continue on with that role in his new position down the line. So it can take some of those responsibilities off of whoever this new AD hire is going to be, and he gets to essentially have the fun side of the job of being an athletic director.
It's fascinating. Earlier on Twitter, Gamecock fans, I don't know what it is. Gamecock fans have the ability, Diesel, to literally react to something that's not intended to be a shot. But earlier today on Twitter, after this news came out, I posted, I could see the argument for how this may buy Shane Beamer another season as head coach. I said, it's not likely, in my opinion, for a new AD to come in and make major changes early in his or her tenure. I don't think Beamer's on the hot seat to begin with, but this may even buy him more time. Well, I said that, bam, Gamecock fans, you think he's on the hot seat? Are you stupid? Are you trying to be like why would you think he's on the hot seat? When did I say he's on the hot seat?
Because he's barely got a plus 500 record.
I literally said this could buy Shane Beamer a year. And I have people, Gamecock fans on my Twitter, who come at me and are like, you don't know what you're talking about. He wasn't on the hot seat. Again, I never said he was.
They're only saying those things because they actually won last week. If South Carolina had lost, this is how fickle this fan base is. The Angry Birds, they start chirping, right?
Yeah.
If they had lost that football game against Kentucky or barely won it, let's just say you win it on a last-second field goal, your mentions and notifications are very, very different right now with that exact same tweet.
Yeah, so again, I'm looking at several tweets right now. Indian Kev says, Shane wasn't even close to the hot seat, man. Don't be like, who, former host. I said back, when did I say Shane was on the hot seat? And he says, well, the whole makeup of this post suggests that he was. No, there's no suggestions. People have the worst problem putting words in other people's mouth. Mm-hmm. I literally said this buys him a year. Coach Dakota, Shane Beamer was going to be the coach in 2025 unless the sky fell. Let's see. A previous tweet. You really think he's on the hot seat? Like, when did I say
here's how they took it, Cole. They took it as you saying you believed Shane Beamer's job this year was at risk, as in fired at or near the end of this season, and that this hire keeps him safe for another year. That's how they take it. That's not what you said. It's not what you said, but it's what people hear.
I do believe, though, when you look at it, because we kind of saw this with Graham Neff and Brad Brownell to an extent, Diesel. You and I started this show in March, and, the Brad Brownell talks were happening in terms of a little bit of a collapse toward the end of the season. Then they go on a great March Madness run. Brad Brownell, best guy in the world after that run. Anyways, it's kind of a similar situation here with the new AD. My point is, I think that you could argue that it does buy Shane Beamer another season because let's say, 2024 Christmas time, they begin the search. Well, January, they find the guy. February, 2025 February, they have their guy. Do you mean to believe that that he's going to come in and just judge Shane Beamer off of one season in 2025. No, I think it very well could buy Beamer even to 2026, because if the new AD, if his first season is 2025, I don't expect him to judge Shane Beamer off of 1 year of him being there.
Well, you're judged based on your wins and losses, and we've always heard the stories that ADs want to have their guy in place. And if Shane Beamer struggles for the remainder of this season, and I mean that very well could start tomorrow, or Shane Beamer could be crowned as he could buy himself an extension tomorrow. We just don't know at this point, right? But athletic directors like having their guy in-house, and it kind of depends on how this new AD, whoever he may be, and Shane Beamer mesh, how they get along. If they don't get along, I think it could actually even shorten the fuse, because I mean, South Carolina is always going to be in a position relative to the schedule that they have where coaches are fighting an uphill battle, because you're playing in the toughest conference in college football. You've got a tough perennial top 25 team as part of your annual out-of-conference slate. You're not doing yourselves a whole lot of favors when it comes to scheduling, right? Like, you got a tough schedule. It is what it is, and you can't change that. So, you know, if next year it's a struggle to get to 6-6, and the following year it's a struggle to get to 6-6, we've talked about it many times on this show. South Carolina's football team can get better across the board, but have the same or worse results because you're in such a tough conference. And then eventually the fan base will say, well, we need to have somebody in here who can get it done. You know, we need to shuffle the deck chairs and figure something else out and see if somebody else could do better than this.
Under Ray Tanner, Diesel, like what's so fascinating about this conversation is there are a lot of Gamecock fans that are not happy with Ray Tanner. However, Gamecock teams have enjoyed new levels of success under Tanner. The women's basketball team won 3 national titles, 2017, 22, and 24. The equestrian team took home the 2015 national championship. 8 other programs posted the best finishes in their histories, including football, volleyball, and men's basketball, while reaching the Final Four for the first time in 2017. Gamecock squads under Ray Tanner won 21 SEC regular season and tournament titles and made 154 postseason appearances. He also financially, you talked about it earlier, he also has helped build and sustain financial services and success at USC, with the Gamecocks coming off of a year of record revenue and fundraising. 2023, a record year for South Carolina when it comes to revenue. Fundraising, the athletic department revenues have risen by nearly 80% since Tanner's first year as AD. Think about that. 80% in a 12-year window, or 2012 to 2024. He was hired in 12. It's now 2024. The Gamecocks have surpassed $20 million in annual fundraising for the first time last year. So I get South Carolina fans may not love his hires. You know, he didn't get credit for the Dawn Staley hire because she was there before he got there. However, I do believe when you look at the fundraising aspect of it, you brought it up at the very beginning of the segment, South Carolina fans, Diesel, may be upset, but this guy's proven, he has a proven track record of being able to raise money for the university.
Well, under his tenure, sure, all these programs across South Carolina have seen a tremendous amount of success, and that's his job, right? It's his job to raise money, and it's his job to put as many programs as he can in a position to be successful. And, you know, it helps when you get another $50 million a year flying into your pocket every single year. That helps, right? But his job is also to allocate those funds and figure out where's the best place and best way to use the funds that he has available to him. And this is why I'm glad fans are not put in charge of running college football teams, because there's far too many emotions involved. Fans equal fanatics. You go a little bit nuts sometimes. You make rash decisions. It's a good thing that they don't put it to a fan vote on a week in, week out basis as to who the head coach is at some of these programs, because the mob is fickle, right? I grew up watching The Gladiator, and I remember that line, the mob is fickle, brother. They'll forget him in a week. That's how a lot of fans are a lot of the times. So people above his head who have more level heads than fans do, they're the ones who get to make these decisions, and they typically get it right.
So the difference is, here's what's fascinating. To put a bow in this conversation, then we'll get to the phones and a couple of texts. Diesel, while he raised a ton of money, none of Tanner's hires ever won a conference championship. The 2 hires he made to replace him as baseball coach, Holbrook and Kingston, weren't able to replicate that same success on the diamond. He hired Will Muschamp to replace Steve Spurrier. We know how that went, right? He also hired Tom Mendoza, who took the volleyball program to the first NCAA tournament in 16 years, and then 2 more. Shane Beamer was his hire to replace Muschamp, 2 bowl games in 3 seasons, and obviously a 2-0 start to the season. And he did pluck Lamont Paris from Chattanooga, who looks to be a fantastic hire. If we're looking at his hires, it looks right now like Lamont Paris may be the best one yet.
Yeah, you can't argue with what Lamont Paris has been able to achieve in a short period of time. And, all things indicate that Lamont Paris is going to keep having success. There's no reason why the basketball program should fall off. They're doing a fantastic job in the transfer portal. They're doing a fantastic job selling tickets, right? So if you can put fans in the stands, and if you can hire a coach who seems to be doing the right things, especially in the transfer portal and getting players to come to your university and look good, then the basketball program is doing exactly what it needs to. The problem, as you pointed out, is that the 2 biggest sports, football and the sport from which Ray Tanner came, baseball, have not been particularly successful since his exit. It just shows you how hard it is to hire in college athletics. I mean, you can think that you've got the right guy. You can think that, that you've got this diamond in the rough kind of dude that is gonna just come in and be phenomenal and figure it out right away. And things can go sideways on you real fast, but you don't get to make those knee-jerk decisions and say, oh, you had 1 bad season, you're fired, you're gone. No, they have to slow things down a little bit. They have to be a little bit more measured. And, South Carolina baseball fans certainly have reason to be upset with the way the program has gone. Some of you may still even be a little upset with the hire of Paul Maneri, but we don't know how good he's going to be at South Carolina.
And not to mention, Lamont Paris's team this year is going to be stacked. So it should be another really good year. Let's go to the phones, and then we'll get to a few texts. 844-FAN-PHONE. That's FAN phone, F-O-N-E. That's 326-3663. Again, 844-326-3663. It's the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas Fan Phone. It's Dewey. I've termed it our daily Dewey. Sometimes it's not bad. Sometimes it's very bad. Dewey, what's up, man?
Yes, first of all, I'm glad Ray Tanner's leaving. He sucks. Secondly, Shane Beamer forever. He's going to get a 10-year extension. He's going to win national championships, and he's going to win the SEC Coach of the Year and the National Coach of the Year.
Wow.
Y'all need to leave him alone.
Thanks. I like
what
the
a swing.
I like the Thanks, Dewey.
He's gone from Shane Beamer sucks.
Yeah, he did.
To I'm sorry, Shane, I was tough on you. To Shane, back to Shane Beamer forever.
It's been a while since we've heard
calls.
Shane Beamer forever, isn't it?
It has been.
And I thought Dewey might be swinging on Beamer. All right, a few texts. Shane Barrett getting his upset pick in. South Carolina +7. I like it, Shane. I don't hate that pick at all. Let's see. Buckeye Mike says, hey, bumpers, I'll take Colorado State Rams +7 over the – I'll get to that story in a second. Over the Colorado Buffaloes. Thanks, Buckeye Mike. Have a great weekend. And let's see. Wesley Roberts has taken Tulane over Oklahoma +13. You know, a lot of hate because I decided to use bumpers yesterday, and I'm not a bowler, Diesel, at our company party that we had. And, you know, I don't see a problem with using bumpers.
It's not how you the fact that you use the bumpers. It's how you use the bumpers.
What do you mean by that?
Because you roll your first ball down the lane, and then before the arm had even set all of the pins back up and lifted up, you were ping-ponging the ball. It's like ding, 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 down the lane.
You're right.
You weren't even trying to do it right.
It's a methodology that just hope that it hits.
Yeah, and then the second game comes around, we take the bumpers off for you, but don't tell you. You're like, where'd my bumpers go?
Yeah, I can't do it. No, if there's no bumpers, I'm not bowling. I'm not good at it.
I'm just glad that you didn't walk in here bragging like you won something. Because in the first game, I think you definitely beat Rod. Did you beat both of us?
I won the first one, but it was with bumpers, so I'm not going to brag about it. It's like bragging about, you know, having a car that wins a race versus car with two cars with no wheels on it that wins the race. So I'm not going to brag entirely. The best part of the day, though, yesterday, even though I did win the first game with bumpers, the best part was what happened after. I mean, I think I believe Rob and Alonzo did talk about that this morning. I didn't get a chance to listen. However, I get a text message. I have to go to the Greer game yesterday. Burns played last night. So I leave spare time in Greenville. You and Rob and Lonzo were still there. Lonzo, Rob had a discussion after you saw what I did. I leave spare time, and I get on 85 heading toward Greer. And about 10 minutes down the road, Diesel, I get a picture from Rob Brown, and guess what the picture is? It's my tennis shoes.
You were up somewhere past Pelham Road, right?
No, I had just passed the mall.
Oh, okay.
So there wasn't a quick way to turn around. I had to go like 2 more exits and get off and come all the way back around. It took me like
the mall.
Haywood Mall.
How did you get exits to get to Haywood Mall?
I don't know.
Did you get back on the highway?
I think so.
How the hell did you
I was just following my GPS.
Oh,
anyways, the moral of the story is I walked out with my bowling shoes on and got down 85 and realized, still have my bowling shoes on. So Diesel and Lonzo,
flash and flare and so debonair.
They were petitioning for Rob not to tell me. They were petitioning for Rob to say, no, don't send the picture. Let him get to Greer High School for the Burns game with the bowling shoes on, which I think is tragic. I mean, if that would have happened, can you imagine how embarrassed it would have been? But I had to turn around and go get my shoes that I left at the bowling alley.
Spent the first segment talking about massive change at South Carolina. Now it seems there's a lot of massive change coming to college football out west. The Pac-2 rides again. We'll talk about it. We'll question who they should go after and how will this affect the CFP? That's next, right here on the Fan Upstate. It's official. Our fearless leader in the wire-to-wire upset picks challenge, Amazon guy, has made his upset pick.
We're all changing out.
The Wyoming Cowboys to get their first win over BYU for 11.5 points. He says, why not? I'm sitting pretty at 34.5 points.
And now 9 other texts just came in taking Wyoming. Copycats.
Yeah. Well, good news is nobody can change theirs.
That's
it's
true.
already locked in. Smarty Party 12 says he wants UNLV +9 over Kansas. A lot to get to here on the show. We're going to get into your upset picks, go back and catch up on some of your upset picks from yesterday, coming up a little bit later on in the show. But big changes happening out west, and maybe Wyoming, the team that Amazon guy likes, could be a beneficiary of this situation. If you have been living under a rock for the past 36 hours, you don't know that the Pac-2 is now the 6-pack. They're back,
Ooh.
baby. Pac-2 have taken 4 members, have gotten commitments from 4 members of the Mountain West Conference to move into the Pac. They need 2 more to go to be a full-fledged conference. Cole, at any point, we're going to see this thing change, right? We're going to see 2 more schools announce their defection from their leagues to go into the Pac. Just a lot to unpack here, no pun intended, about what's going on, because number one, it could affect FBS conferences nearby. It could potentially affect the ACC. It could affect the Mountain West even more. It could affect all of those FCS conferences in the area. But Boise State, Fresno State, San Diego State, and Colorado State all expected to join Washington State and Oregon State to bring the Pac brand back from the grave. Are you excited to have this Conference of Champions almost whole again? 3/4 of the way there.
That's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
Like, could we get 6 more? Because if we get 6 more, we're back to Pac-12. You know, I did enjoy the Pac-12. All kidding aside, I know it got just demolished. But the Pac-12, you know, sometimes, D's, on a Saturday night when you were watching these Pac-12 games at what, 1 a.m.?
They're great.
You know, there was something about it. It was
I'd
like
stay
that
away.
little taste, right?
Stay up till like 2 in the morning because you're getting quality football still late at night. As we're going to
Now
do our weekly menu, our Saturday menu a little bit later on, you're going to find out there's not a whole lot of good football being played in that late time slot. I'm not talking about the 7:30 primetime East Coast time slot. I'm talking about that 9 p.m., 10 p.m. Eastern kickoff slot. There ain't nothing out there. So finally, we're getting that back.
I'm excited to see it rebranded, I guess. However, will it ever, the question I ask, will it ever be as good as it was at the Pac-12?
Well, not immediately, no.
Maybe one day.
Yeah,
Maybe
you got to give this thing some years to advance. So, number one, they're sitting on a lot of cash. They're sitting on a pile. The Washington State Cougars and the Oregon State Beavers are sitting on a mountain of cash that totals about $250 million. That is the collective amount of exit fees that the 10 schools that defected all left behind. So Washington State and Oregon State were able to sit back a little bit and be proactive. There was this common belief, Cole, that those 2 schools were going to just dissolve football. They're going to have to go running to an FCS league. They're going to have to anybody could throw them a life raft. Please help out these 2 schools. No, man, they were sitting on an awful lot of money, so they could be as selective as they wanted to be. They could have gone independent and had so much stinking money to buy whatever opponents they wanted to come into their respective stadiums. But that's not what they did. They took their time. They took advantage of the fact that they had 2 full calendar years to get this conference back up and running and potentially hang on to their autonomous status. And that's what's really going to fascinate me as a fan of a G5 school. Tron, I know, who's an alum of Georgia Southern University. We got a lot of Tolos who probably went to Georgia State or went to Charlotte or any of those schools. You could be at risk now of losing out on your playoff berth that you thought you had as a guaranteed slot for a G5 conference winner.
So my brain goes here. Who are the 2 because I don't hate Boise State being in the Pac-6 now. I don't hate that.
Yeah.
I think Boise State's a good team, and they're normally on most years, Diesel, they're a good enough brand to draw attention. But like, if you have to get to 8 to make it an official conference, right? The last two that you get, I think you really need to shoot for the stars. That's where I go here. What last two teams could they get? Because I would expect they're not going to stop at 8, right? They would probably try their best to get back to 12. But I think this is a big opportunity for two teams that really could be a part of something maybe pretty cool here in the Pac-12 if it gets back to the Pac-12.
So the size of schools that they're going after, they're not going after tiny little schools. I know we think of West Coast football programs as being smaller, lesser football programs, but there's some big schools that they added. Fresno State has 22,000 enrollment. That's just barely smaller than Clemson. And I know Clemson is kind of small when it comes to an FBS school, especially an FBS power. Colorado State has 33,000 students. San Diego State has 33,000 students. Boise State has 23,000 students. So we're not talking about tiny institutions that are being added to this. When we're talking about football prowess and power, we're really only talking about Boise State. San Diego State has popped up and been good a little bit here and there over the years. They're a much better basketball program than they are a football program, but that puts you into a big old market. San Diego. Fresno puts you into a big old market. You add Boise in a small market, but they have really, really good football. And then Colorado State gets you back into the state of Colorado.
Yeah, it does.
So there's a couple of options that I see for the Pac-6 now to go after. Now, there's no reason for them to necessarily try to get above 8 because, Cole, they also have to seek out a media partner, or this whole thing crumbles before it really even gets off the ground, right? They're certainly not expected to get back to the financial situation that the Pac-12 had when they had USC and Washington and Oregon in the conference, right? They're not going to be able to get a media partner to spend the same amount of money on those schools that they're now getting for Boise State and Fresno and Colorado. So the financial situation is definitely going to take on a big hit, and they got to figure that out first. So in my mind, there's no reason whatsoever to go above 8. 8 is the minimum for an FBS conference. You would play 7 conference games, and you would have 5 opportunities for out-of-conference scheduling.
Yeah.
And that's what's really fascinating about the scheduling situation, is because now they can go out and get each school has one more opportunity to sign a big home-and-home deal or a one-off deal with some big-time programs to draw attention and eyeballs.
What's interesting is Stanford and Cal just entered the ACC. And, I don't know if anyone would sit here and say, look, the ACC is a better fit for Stanford and Cal than the Pac-6 right now, Pac-8, soon to be maybe 12, whatever you want to call it. I don't know what the potential or what would have to happen for them to get Stanford and Cal in the Pac-6 as of right now. But I think those two would be a massive upgrade. And I'm not saying in terms of immediate benefit because they're not good. Cal beat Auburn. So, hey, there's something to hang your hat on. But doesn't it make a lot more sense for Stanford and Cal to be in the Pac-6 than the ACC across the country?
What matters is how locked in are they to the grant of rights at this point, right? Do they have some sort of an out built into their contract that says, hey, if our former home, the Pac whatever, comes back to fruition, we can pay a little financial penalty, or we just wash our hands, say, thanks, guys. We appreciate you letting us crash on your sofa for a little while, but we're going to go back to our house now, and we're going to play football out west. Certainly, it would make that conference look better. And I love conference realignment when it sort of corrects some old bad moves, right? I'm talking about all the way back to adding a school that had no business being there when they just so happened to be in the right place at the right time when a conference was founded, talking about you, Vanderbilt. I like it when it fills a hole in a map, but that's not really how conference realignment goes anymore, right? It's all about What can we do to build the most attractive television package? And Mountain West schools were getting paid about $5 million a year annually. Now, for the Mountain West, that's certainly going to drop because now 4 of their biggest brands are gone. But you can't imagine that these schools are going to be getting a tremendous amount more money in this new PAC conference.
P Digits on the stream diesel, something interesting says that ACC grant of rights is ironclad. Sorry, Cal and Stanford. And to your point earlier, that may be, the stick.
Did they sign a long-term grant of rights? Are they in the grant of rights for the same term as all of the other ACC members? Or are they doing a grant of rights for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Because at that point, Cole, now these schools are going to be moving into the Pac-6 essentially in 2027. So if Cal and Stanford signed a deal that only runs through like 2028, they could rejoin that conference in 2028.
Yeah.
Right.
It's interesting.
And that's just 3 years down the road.
It is. I don't know what it would take for those two to leave, but I just think it makes way more sense for them to be.
Well, they have to have cleaned house, honestly, at this point, because the Pac-12 was so grossly mismanaged that until you clean that rot out, right? Until you dig that cancer out, nothing's going to change in this new Pac-6. You can add whatever G5 powers to this thing you want to, but if you don't change the management structure that got you into that terrible position in the first place, going back home for Cal and Stanford to a West Coast conference doesn't really seem like a starter to me.
It's something else, man. It's something else. Pac-12, Pac-2, trying to get back to the Pac-6 and Pac-8. We don't know what to call it now. I mean, let's just call them the Pac until they land on a number. How about that? High school football week 3. Hey, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Burns Rebels and a lot of other teams here in the upstate played last night. We'll look at some games that happened in the upstate, as well as 1 or 2 games still tonight on the slate. Your thoughts as well. 71307 is the text line. Start your text with the word fan. little high school football conversation here in hour number 1 of the show. I want to start with an announcement that came just a few minutes ago, Diesel. 4-star tight end Michael Skinner has decommitted from Cincinnati. He tells On3 Recruits. The 6'4", 220-pound tight end from Greer that plays for Riverside had been committed to the Bearcats since June. Skinner has a total of 22 offers. Wonder if the Gamecocks are trying to.
So who walked in with the bag of cash?
Oh, man.
Somewhere Scott Satterfield is throwing his visor against a wall. He is pissed. Like, we had this 4-star.
I forgot about
guy.
That Satterfield over there. Man,
he's doing well at Cincinnati. You know, tough slate for him at Louisville. I bet South Carolina fans, God, you're overjoyed that you didn't hire Scott Satterfield.
And maybe South Carolina fans, maybe Clemson fans, not sure. Not sure if he's going to keep it in state, but a decommitment there from Cincinnati, very interesting. A lot of games last night, a lot of good games as well. You heard the Burns Rebels versus the Greer Yellow Jackets. We'll start with that, Diesel. 2000, the year 2000, long time ago, was the last time the Greer Yellow Jackets had defeated the Burns Rebels. 16 straight wins for Burns over Greer. How is that
possible? Greer's had a good program over the years.
It's been 24 years, wow. 16 straight wins, and guess what? They say all streaks come to an end. That proved true last night. Greer defeated Burns 18-10. Greer gets their first win of the season. However, on the Burns side of things, we carry the Burns Rebels. I hear from a lot of Burns fans, a very big fan base in the upstate who don't like to lose, and the Rebels starting 0-3. As you can imagine, there are some angry Rebel fans this morning.
Who has been in your DMs more, Cole? Angry Gamecock fans or angry Burns fans?
Today, so I've had a lot of Gamecock fans on Twitter, but the DMs and messages, Burns. The Burns faithful, they're not happy. A tough loss last night for the Burns Rebels. Just never got anything going offensively. Greer absolutely dominated the line of scrimmage. And Diesel, football, when you only have 5 yards rushing as a team, you're not going to win many games.
Not 5 yards per carry, 5 yards total.
5 yards total for the whole game for Burns.
Wow. So Greer must have been living in the backfield, blowing up a lot of plays.
A lot of negative yardage. Yeah.
Pushing a lot of guys backwards. Just shutting that run game down. Now, how did Burns do in the passing game? Obviously, it wasn't a blowout football game, and you would think a team that only had 5 yards passing, would get blown out, but that certainly wasn't the case.
Yeah, over 100 yards passing, not a great night. Again, nothing really to take away for Burns offensively. That was a bright spot. Kane Rogers and the Rebels offensively just never got going. And again, Greer hung around. And if you underestimate a team like Greer, they hang around the fourth quarter. Will Young does a good job over there. And his guys were fired up. It's a rivalry that Greer's been wanting for a long, long time. They get it. And for the first time since 2000, the Greer Yellow Jackets can say that they defeated the Burns Rebels. So a big win for them. Most games got moved to last night.
Yeah, I don't like using weather as an excuse. What was your weather situation like out there? Down here in Greenville and Malden, we got next to nothing. So
it didn't rain until late in the game.
Okay, so that's not an excuse.
In Greer. Nah,
both teams play in the same conditions.
You know me,
right?
Man. I don't like the excuse stuff. I don't like the big. I'm not big on the excuses. Rain, but you said it. Both teams have to play in the rain.
I mean, even Aaron Rodgers says lack of preseason playing together. That's just an excuse. we don't gel very well because
he said that, really?
Yeah, he said that earlier this week.
That's great.
Somebody asked him about guys not getting a lot of reps together, not seeming like they're on the same page.
I didn't know he said that.
Play a lot in the preseason together, and he goes, "Well, that's an excuse." No, Aaron, that's not an excuse. That's a reason.
It doesn't surprise me though that he said that. A few other scores from last night. A big night for Mountain View Prep. Our player of the week, the Fan Upstate Player of the Week from last week, or this past week rather, was Mountain View Prep running back Jalen McGill. MVP had a big win over Crescent last night, 48-21. Broome defeated Emerald 28-25. As I just told you a few minutes ago, Greer defeated Burns 18-10. Clinton all over Chapman last night. I picked that game right, 49-27. Chapman struggling out of the gate. Landrum with a big win over Polk County, 43-6. Blacksburg Union 30-27. I want to come back to that, Diesel, because I think I'm going to blow your mind. Union defeated Blacksburg 30-27. Woodruff last night defeated Woodmont 36-13. All right, are you ready for your mind to be blown on this Friday, September the 13th?
My hat is off.
Okay.
I'm not going to ruin anything if my brain explodes, except the ceiling tiles above me. Let's do this.
So here's the situation. I think our Tolos will like this as well. I had a good friend of mine who was at the game last night, two of them actually. Union County versus Blacksburg. I want you to follow with me. This high school football game last night, Diesel in the fourth quarter with 2 minutes to go in the game, 2 minutes on the clock. It was 27-8. Okay?
27-8, 2 minutes to go.
Yep. Blacksburg had a 27-8 lead over Union County.
Mm-hmm.
The final score I just told you, Union County won the football game 30-27. Diesel, they were down 27-8 with
scored
2 minutes on the clock.
22 points in 2 minutes on the clock.
Better than that. They scored 22 points in 30 seconds.
Wow.
Two fumbles on kickoffs, and one play from scrimmage.
Oh, Blacksburg. You had him.
Blacksburg was up.
You had him.
Can you imagine? Just imagine for a second. And we love Josh Batchelor, the Blacksburg coach. We just had him on the Saturday Scramble. He's a listener of our show. We love Josh Batchelor. But can you imagine how tough that's got to be, being up 27-8 Diesel with 2 minutes to play, and Union County coming back to win the football game? That's brutal. A tough loss for Blacksburg. Hopefully those guys rebound okay. 2 games tonight. Gaffney hosting Freedom tonight. And then over in Anderson, the game of the week, Westside and BHP tonight.
Would that be Freedom from Shelby, North Carolina?
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
Somewhere in North Carolina. They used to victimize my high school as well.
That's right. That's where they are. So a lot of high school football. Texter on the text line says Burns needs a coaching change. 8 years is too long. I know a lot of Burns fans are upset and not happy with an 0-3 start.
We had Rev Red text in, says, how can I confirm my upset challenge pick? Well, Rev Red, we got yours. We're going to get to some of your other Tolo picks as well, and invite you, those of you who haven't gotten in your week 3 upset picks, to do so next on the Fan Upstate. The show is alive, and the Upset Picks Challenge for Week 3 is alive as well, and the text line absolutely buzzing. And I haven't even asked for picks today yet. We have so many messages coming in, getting in your upset picks. That's awesome, man. That this thing has taken on a life of its own. The Upset Picks Challenge brought to you by Ingles Markets. We appreciate Ingles' sponsorship of this event. It's such a big one, man, and you guys make it huge each and every year. Dan B, who we think is probably in the air right now, carrying the LSU football team.
Can you hear us, Dan?
From Baton Rouge. He stopped by the show on Wednesday.
He did, yeah.
And he was telling us how it works. Dan B is a pilot with a certain large American airline, not American Airlines.
Big Tolo, Dan B, by the way.
He was telling us the process, how he as a pilot can get a job like this. And he goes, I look out for things like this. He goes, whenever South Carolina is playing, I look for flights back and forth from near where the visiting opponent is from, right? And he just goes into some online portal and just bids like, yep, I'll do that one.
That's cool, though.
I'd like to do this, or this on this day. And whichever one he gets assigned, he goes and does. So he was telling me about trying to snipe a photo of Brian Kelly, because I guess the pilots are not supposed to talk to the celebrities who are on their planes. Yeah. You can't just go up and say, hey, I'm the pilot. Will you take a selfie with me, Brian Kelly? You can't do that. He actually tried to put in like an official request, but he doesn't think it's going to happen. We have this like Google Doc where we keep all of our picks, and we're just like posting messages back and forth to each other throughout the day. He's like, yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm going to try to get a picture of him from like a distance. So now we know we got Dan B like holding up his phone, kind of disguised and like, oh, I'm just sending a text message. Click. No, it's a photo of Brian Kelly. Dan B, we appreciate his assistance in getting this program
the best, man.
Going. Yeah, we really, really do. He is fantastic. But to get to the picks that have been made already today, and by the way, those of you who got in your picks yesterday, we've got them. Okay, we've got them. We went back and we pulled all of the picks that came in yesterday when we were not on the air. We got Tron.
Lots come in, by the way.
Yeah, Tron's taking Memphis over Florida State plus I think 3.5. That one is Oregon State over Oregon plus 16.5. That's from Billy Ho. We got Frank Wagner who wants South Carolina plus 7 over LSU. Let's see here. Boiling Springs Dave is also taking Oregon State over Oregon. Fred Savage in North Texas plus 9.5 against T-Tech. I guess that's Texas Tech. Wouldn't be Tennessee Tech, would it? Let's see here. JC wants UNLV plus 9 over Kansas. Dan B himself is taking Southern Miss plus 12 against USF. E thought he wants Tulane over Oklahoma plus 14. And Scotty from BMW is taking TCU plus 2.5 to upset UCF. Those were the picks. They came in yesterday.
I did want to say to the Tolos, I've seen a couple of Tolos asking this today, asking if they can confirm that we got their pick. If you receive a confirmation back, when you text 71307 and start your text with the word fan, if you receive a confirmation back, yes, we did get it. Diesel does read some on the air. I read some on the air, but just because we don't read it doesn't mean we didn't get it. We cannot read all of them. So
if we read every single one of these, it'd be boring. We wouldn't have a show, right? It would be nonstop because we've already surpassed the most number of unique players we've ever had in this challenge in years past, because you guys are awesome. You Tolos are jumping on board playing the game. So, again, we can't read every single one of them. We do our best.
Let's reset the scene with your pick and my pick for the week.
Yeah, I took Arizona over Kansas State.
Is that tonight?
That is tonight.
Oh,
that is tonight. As of right now, the spread is Arizona plus 7.
You know what? That might be a good pick, Diesel.
I like it. Yeah. Arizona's putting up some mad points this year. They put up 61 points against New Mexico. They had a bit of a rough showing for whatever reason last week against Northern Arizona. I'd have to go back and see if I can figure out, like, did quarterback get hurt or something that they messed up things? Because Noah Fafita is a fantastic quarterback. So what happened to him last week? He must have gotten taken out early in that game.
Here's a couple of numbers for you to see if that makes you feel better. You ready? Arizona is is it 7-point favorite? Is that what it is?
Kansas State 7.
I'm sorry, Kansas State is favored by 7. You're going with Arizona. Arizona carries the nation's longest winning streak at 9 games. The school, that's it. The school is 5-1-1 in this head-to-head series. Though the teams haven't played since 1978, this game hadn't been played in a long time. Arizona, here's where the issue is. Their offense hasn't clicked yet, which is why they're 0-2 against the spread in 2024. It's at Kansas State. I think that's why, obviously, they are favored in this one. But Arizona plus 7 doesn't seem like a bad bet. I know they're 0-2, or excuse me, I know Kansas State's 0-2. And, last week they played Tulane. They didn't cover the 9.5. But I don't think it's a terrible one. I really don't.
And who did you end up taking? Are you rolling with South Carolina again?
No. I forgot.
Because we got a lot.
Who did I take?
We got a lot. That's close to that's got to be the most common.
What, South Carolina?
South Carolina over LSU.
No, I almost did. I don't hate that.
I know you looked at it.
I did look at it. I got to find my pick. I'm scrolling. How bad is it that I forgot my upset pick for the week? I'm really trying to find it right now. I know it was a later game. It was too small. Wasn't it Middle Tennessee or something like that? Yes. Diesel, 7 o'clock Saturday. My pick. Western Kentucky at Middle Tennessee. Western Kentucky on the roads favored by 7. I'm taking Middle Tennessee. All I know about Middle Tennessee is they're somewhere in the middle of the state of Tennessee.
Murfreesboro.
Is that where it is? Murfreesboro.
It's not Murfreesboro. It's Murfreesboro.
Murphy.
Yeah, no
France.
It's
France.
Yeah.
It's Murfreesboro.
Yeah, there ain't nothing French about Eastern Tennessee. I can promise you that. Or Central Tennessee.
Give me Murphy and the borough against Western Kentucky. They're going down, man. Like, I don't know anything about Western. I'm not going to act like I do. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I just did all this research on Western Kentucky.
You just got to go by your gut sometimes.
These are literally geographical locations. West Kentucky, Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, they're directional schools.
Yeah, they're directional schools. They're going to meet somewhere in the middle. I have no clue who will win.
Now, if you wanted to go with your brain, you'd wait until Amazon guy gets in his pick.
Well, he did today, right?
Everybody. He's taking Wyoming to get their first win over BYU. BYU just had a big upset last week. He hit with BYU, I think, is who he picked in week 2. Now he's taking BYU to get beat by Wyoming.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's a ballsy pick there.
It is. So now, to reset this challenge for anybody who's not entirely sure how this works, and that's okay because we got a lot of Tolos who are just joining the show. Those of you who are, now that football is back, now you're like, okay, now I'm going to listen to sports radio. Yeah. So what you need to do, and anybody, you can jump into this challenge at any time. Trust me, there's a lot of people with a big fat 0 on the board. I'm one of them. You could jump in and score an upset this week and be better than me already at this challenge. So I'm mad. I've come real close twice. So all you need to do is go on ESPN.com. We like you to do it on Wednesdays, but you can do it anytime from Wednesday, Thursday, Friday while we're on the air. Go on ESPN.com, look at the spreads in college football games for the upcoming weekend. Pick a game that you think the betting underdog will win the game outright. Not against the spread, win the game outright. And if you correctly pick the team that wins outright, or a team that wins outright, you get the points by which that team was an underdog added to a rolling season-long tally. So if you picked South Carolina last week, I think the spread was 7.5 against Kentucky. 10.5. 10. Yeah. So you would get 10 points added to your tally. You hit them again this week, you would get another 6.5, 7 points. Whatever the spread was on Wednesday, that's when we locked it in.
I think it was still.
And then it rolls and builds and builds and builds. Now, if you get it wrong one week, you lose a point. If you don't make a pick at all, you lose 2 points. That's how we get you coming back week in and week out to be a part of this challenge. We don't want you falling back, right? We don't want you falling all the way back to 0. And that's as far as you can go. I think can't go in the negatives.
I know DB's probably in the air right now and he's not listening, but I think South Carolina, Kentucky's Wednesday at 3:00. I believe it was 7-point line. Now, here's what's interesting about that one. You said, Diesel, I've got some numbers for you. Would you say that's probably one of the more popular picks this week?
Oh, by far, yeah.
So here's some numbers. Dating back to last season, LSU has lost 3 in a row against the spread, and that may have bettors cautious this week with the Tigers. USC coming off of an impressive win over Kentucky, where they were a big underdog, but the Gamecocks, according to the numbers, have some fluky analytics, and they have maybe been figured, pundits say, are a little overrated. South Carolina has been leaky in allowing chunk plays this season in the passing game. LSU has a solid edge in preventing, havoc plays, converting deep drives into 7 points. A lot of pundits are giving LSU the edge just because of the talent. This total has gone, oh no, this has nothing to do with the upset picks challenge, but the total has gone over in 17 of 19 LSU games. So if you like gambling, take the over Saturday. History tells you it's gone over. I think South Carolina here, I think it's going to continue to be a popular pick, and we will have our official predictions at 5 o'clock on the show. But I think South Carolina is in an interesting spot because LSU Diesel did get embarrassed in the fourth quarter and how they lost that game against USC just a couple of weeks ago. I think this one this week is one of the harder games to pick. I know everybody's going South Carolina, but
yeah,
I'll tell you this, as of right now at 4-12, I don't know who I'm picking for this game.
I'm shocked that to this point, we have not had a single Tolo pick Wisconsin to upset Alabama. We know Alabama looked bad last week.
They did. They
looked
good,
bad
yeah.
against South Florida. Wisconsin's 2-0. Hadn't played a power team yet. Western Michigan and South Dakota, a G5 and an FCS game. Then they get a tough slate of Alabama, USC on the road, and then Purdue coming into their house. But Wisconsin, that's a program that's got a lot of history. They've got a lot of talent. Nobody taking that one. And man, if you hit on that one, you got yourself, what is it? As of right now, it's 16.5 points, depending on what the spread was on Wednesday. Now, remember, if you want to be in this challenge, if you're not in this challenge, here's how you send us your pick. Remember, you give us your name, your game, and the spread. Text that in to 71307. Start your text with keyword fan. That way we can see it. Give me your name, your game, and your spread. So you would text in 71307. First word in your text is fan, and you would say John Smith, Wisconsin plus 16.5 versus Alabama. That's exactly how it should look. John Smith plus 16.5, Wisconsin versus Alabama. And that's what you got to do. And we had a texter get in earlier, and I appreciate the texter for making this mistake. Tigerville Bo says, I want Arizona over Kansas State. Well, Tigerville Bo, you didn't give us the spread. You got to give us your name, your game, and the spread. Without that information, all three of those things,
and Tigerville Bo,
invalid pick.
Whatever the points are now, just send that. We'll correct it. I know you can't know what it was on Wednesday, but whatever the spread is, and we'll try our best to.
And it's tough. It's tough with games that happened. For example, the game last night between Texas State and Arizona State, that game was a pick'em at one point earlier in the week. And then it's shifted both up and down to where both teams have been a favorite. We have to lock these things in as of Wednesday at 3 o'clock. We lock it in so that no matter what, whether you pick on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, everyone who picks the same game will get the same number of points no matter what.
Will G sends in one just a few seconds ago correctly. Wisconsin over Alabama, 16.5. I'll tell you what, man.
That's a big balls pick.
That is a big balls pick. It hasn't been sent in to my knowledge. I haven't seen that one a ton, Diesel, but I think that might be like an underrated pick. I'm not saying Alabama's going to lose to Wisconsin. However, you and I sat in the press box Saturday, and Alabama didn't look overly impressive.
No,
we watched that game.
Not crisp at all.
And, Wisconsin's a good team. They have a very good quarterback. There was a ton of panic last week when that game with South Florida was as close as it was. And what's so fascinating, Diesel, is Alabama fans are stuck right now between a rock and a hard place. They really are. But, and I mean a big but, if somehow Wisconsin pulled the 16.5-point upset, Alabama fans would be on what. They would be freaking out, calling for Kalen DeBoer, and it would be a bad day in Tuscaloosa.
Do you know how that game ended, by the way? With Alabama scoring 28 unanswered points in the fourth quarter. Yeah. I mean, that was a tight football game
One
going
point
into the
game when you
fourth.
and I were watching.
Yeah, and then Alabama just poured it on them.
And I think that's when you left, right?
Right. That's
You
what you all
left.
kind of hope happens if your team is in one of those situations. You get deep into the second quarter, you get into the third quarter, and then all of a sudden, you know, the coach puts some smelling salts up next to your nose and, oh, wake up, we're Alabama. We should be beating this team by 30 points. And that's what ended up happening.
What's funny about that score, though, if you and I didn't watch that game, right, and saw the score, again, the final score was what?
God, you just
I'm sorry.
Just
It's
as
okay.
I closed
You don't
it.
have to-
It was 42-16.
If you would have looked at the final score without watching the game, my point is you wouldn't think anything was wrong. But if you watched the game and you saw that it was only a 1 point, 1 point game, you're like, holy crap, Bama's about to, the bed. But the final score doesn't show how close that game was in the fourth quarter until they literally opened a can on South Florida. I think this is a big game Saturday for Alabama. This is a kind of prove-it game, in my opinion, man.
And Kalen DeBoer, we know how nuts Alabama fans are. And there were a lot of people posting on social media, fire Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah.
Right? If you're Alabama and you can go out there and handle a Wisconsin, you should beat. There's a reason why you're 16.5-point favorites in that game. If you go out there and you beat Wisconsin and cover the spread, all is well in Tuscaloosa land. You're good to go. Shane in Sugar Tit gets his pick in, says he'll take Washington State plus 5.5 over Washington.
Shane in Sugar Tit.
Grant in Five Forks wants BC over Missouri plus 14.5. MD75 says give me South Carolina plus 7 over LSU. Will G took Wisconsin over Alabama.
I'll tell you what, man. We talked about it, I believe, Wednesday at Ingles. The Boston College-Mizzou game. That one's intriguing because
Bill O'Brien's a tough-nosed dude, man.
He
I can't
knows
wait.
how to win, right? He knows how to win.
But Missouri's so stacked.
I know, and that's what makes this game so tough to pick.
Flash and finesse team, though.
I don't think they win the game, Diesel, but I wouldn't be surprised if Boston College covered the spread if it was within 14.5. All right. We go to the phones in the very next segment. We talk a little Clemson, a little South Carolina football. Smitty, Matt Smith, Sports Talk Media Network joins us next. Rolling along in hour number 2 of the program. So good to have you with us on this Friday edition of Wire to Wire. He's Diesel. I'm Cole Bryson. This is the Fan Upstate. We'll continue to get back to the Upset Picks Challenge a little bit later in the show because the picks are continuing to come in left and right on the text line. We bring in our weekly Friday guest during football season, Smitty, Sports Talk Media Network. Smitty, Diesel and I got to hang out with you, talk to you a little bit last Saturday night as we thought we were going to see a good game, but it showed that it was not much of a game. Clemson jumped all over App State. What was your biggest takeaway from what you saw Saturday night in Clemson?
Well, I guess I don't know what to take away because it's so fascinating. I think I personally vacillate back and forth about what I saw, about how good App State is. And also, is this who Clemson truly is? And I think the truth lies somewhere in the middle as to whether Clemson is the team that struggles offensively like we saw against Georgia and then the team that was flying high against Appalachian State. I do think it's possible that the unleashing of Bryant Wesco Jr. is moving forward is going to play a major factor because now if Cade Klubnik has the security blanket in Jake Briningstool, and then he has the deep threat in Bryant Wesco, and then he has the route runner in Antonio Williams, and he has the running game in Phil Maffa, and he has the confidence of the coaching staff, I do think Clemson will be better than they showed against Georgia moving forward. I don't think they're going to be the 1999 Rams, the greatest show on turf. I just don't think that's particularly in the DNA of this particular offense. But having said that, I think their offense is going to do its part. I do expect them to play better going forward. So I guess that would be my major takeaway is almost they needed a deep sigh of relief that they know that Cade Klubnik is capable of this.
So Matt,
Sweeney said, but so now I think I believe it a little bit too. Dabo always believes.
So Matt, if you had to look at it like a pie chart and the three options are scheme, execution, and just having superior talent, how would you kind of divvy up those little slices of the pie?
Well, I want to add one more then. If you were going to do a pie, I'd add one more factor, and that's motivation. This team was motivated. They were looking at a bye week. They'd been hearing all the noise. All the print about them was bad. Everything on the internet was bad. All the callers to shows like yours were bad. Diesel was bad-mouthing them in the press box to anybody that would listen. So I think that, to me, that's at least 25% of what we saw. Talent was some, but scheme and execution, that's an interesting one. I certainly think execution was very high. What I would wonder about, this is a big question because David Hood, TigerNet.com, and I really like David. He would put, I think, a bigger slice of pie maybe than you would on scheme. He thought it was a different scheme against Appalachian State. And while that may be true, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know how much of that is informative as we move forward.
Yeah.
Was it because Clemson knew they were in a different weight class? So what we've seen so far is Clemson took on a super heavyweight in Georgia and got bloodied. And then they took on a junior welterweight in App State, and then they beat them in the first round. I don't think we've seen anybody in their weight class yet.
Smitty, you said somewhere in the middle when talking about where this Clemson team is. Would you consider after Georgia and then App State, would you consider NC State somewhere in the middle?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I love that. I love that matchup. So if we were to say how much of this is revelatory, how much do we know? Very similar to South Carolina. With South Carolina playing Old Dominion, we didn't know. We knew that their offense was not elite, and we knew that their defense was very good, but we didn't know, how far to rate either one of those units. Now, after seeing them play Kentucky, we know this defense for South Carolina is legit. That we know. Similarly with Clemson, after playing Georgia and App State, we don't know. We'll find out in 2 weeks. They play because North Carolina State. To follow my last example a little bit further, NC State and Clemson are in the same weight class. They are both expected to challenge for those 2 spots in the ACC championship. So I think after the NC State game, we will know so much more about who Clemson is this season, and can Cade Klubnik be consistent. And then one more thing I want to bring up before I let you ask another question. What is this Upset Picks Challenge? How am I not a part of this? I want to be what text line am I getting? Is it sponsored?
It is sponsored. It's sponsored by Ingles. Ingles Markets is covering this.
I love Ingles. I love a good Laura Lynn steak. So I want to play the upset picks after I get off the air.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure. Number one, we hope you'll listen and send them in that way. But if not, we'll add you to the list of celebrities that we got to reach out to every week to make sure we get their picks. Basically, what you need to do, Matt, is you need to pick a game where you believe the betting underdog is going to win the game outright. So if you were to take South Carolina +7 against LSU this week, if South Carolina pulls off the upset, you would get 7 points. And then next week, you could add more points to that. And the following week, you could add more points to that. But you can pick whatever game you want, any betting underdog you want. You can try to take the small ones for 3-4 points, which seem a little bit easier to call.
Yeah.
Or you could take the big ones, like we had somebody text in earlier, taking Wisconsin over Alabama. That's a 16-pointer, man. That hits. That's a big one for you. It's just less likely that one's going to hit. Matt, I appreciate you not bringing out the audio recording of me saying that I do snow angels on the Tiger Paw if App State won that game. Because I did say that out loud in the press box. Ultimately, it didn't happen. My shirt remains free of grass stains. But I want you to do a little digging through the mud on the question I'm about to ask you here to kind of find the nuggets of truth buried underneath. We've heard a lot of fans crack jokes saying that Dabo finally, took the training wheels off of Garrett Riley, finally let Garrett call the plays. Now, we know that's not true. Garrett Riley is a fine play caller. He did it at a Big 12 school, so there's no reason to believe that Dabo Swinney was putting any restrictions on Garrett. But what do you think was the difference in just the way that the team looked? The way they were calling plays was completely different.
I think if the Clemson coaching staff were honest with themselves, I think they came into the Georgia game. I believe they were thinking, if we're going to win this game, we're probably going to win it somewhere like 17-14. So let's not turn it over. So therefore, you talk about training wheels. In college football, when you're overmatched, you don't want to turn the football over, and that probably went from Dabo Swinney through Garrett Riley, through all the position coaches, down to all the players. They were probably a little nervous about making mistakes and wanted to play in a very conservative way. They tried to lean on Phil Maffa early. Actually, not the first series, but after that, they tried to lean on Phil Maffa a little bit, tried to lean on some of those veteran offensive line. And truthfully, Georgia was just better. Georgia's probably not 30 points better, but they're 2 touchdowns better. So it just looks bad. And then they were able to do the opposite against Appalachian State. Everybody went in with swagger and confidence. And I think from Coach Swinney on down, now we can cut loose. We're the big bully on the block in this ball game. And it doesn't hurt when you have Bryant Wesco Jr. is able to outrun App State's defensive backs by 3 strides down the middle of the field. But I will say, whatever we're talking about when it comes to scheme or what's happening inside those coaches' rooms or what's happening Monday through Friday, one thing that has to be said was Cade Klubnik played with complete and utter confidence. So to me, South Carolina's offense, as an example, did not look good against Old Dominion, and that would not have gotten a good grade even if that were a practice session. That wasn't a good walkthrough.
Matt Smith joining us of Sports Talk Media Network. Smitty, my only pushback on that would be, from a Clemson fan standpoint, why do you have to play a big dog in order to find out how to call plays effectively and how to let your offense loose in order to be able to go win games the rest of the season?
I think they should have reversed. I think they made a mistake in scheduling. Truthfully, I don't think opening the season with Georgia was a good thing for Clemson. I think they have to get rid of that. I mean, wash it out. They've got to move forward. I think if Clemson would have started with App State, you'd see a different Tigers team take on Georgia. Now, again, I don't think they would win. I think Georgia's 2 touchdowns or more clear. What was the spread, about 13.5? Yeah, that's probably right. Georgia's just flat out better than Clemson right now where they are as a program. So I think they just needed that game. Remember, they don't play exhibition games in college. Well, I mean, sometimes they do. Alabama plays Western Carolina. But you get my point. They don't have a preseason to work out everything. And both Clemson and South Carolina's offenses needed an exhibition game. They were not good offensively in game 1. And now in game 2, Clemson was much, much, much better. And I think that's part of it. Not all of it, but an element to it.
Matt Smith of Sports Talk Media joins us here on the Fan Upstate. Lenore Sellers, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick against Kentucky. They didn't seem like they were asking Lenore Sellers to do an awful lot in that football game. He only threw the ball 14 times. And if you just kind of take the third quarter there with a grain of salt, it's kind of a slog of a football game. In your mind, with the way the defense at South Carolina is playing right now, what do you think internally the target number of points that this staff feels like they need to hit from the offense to stand a good chance? Because the defense can hold teams down. We've seen that against Kentucky.
That's right. But in this era, even with the way teams will play tempo and with how many possessions you can get, I still think South Carolina needs 3 touchdowns to win this week. I don't think you can count on them playing that well every week. Things will happen. I mean, even against Old Dominion, there was a busted coverage, and you saw Old Dominion's receiver get loose over the top of DQ Smith. Those things happen. And LSU and the teams they play in the future, like they're going to play Ole Miss and Alabama and Oklahoma, those teams are more likely to make plays like that down the field. So you're going to give up points. But I think the offense still needs to produce 3 touchdowns a game. And for me, what they've got to do is, yes, Lenore Sellers is a soft target, and you can look at his completion percentage or all sorts of things. In fact, he didn't see the blitz coming twice against Kentucky, and he fumbled twice, even though South Carolina recovered those. But somehow, some way, South Carolina has to find a consistent running game. Rocket Sanders put up some yardage last week. Not a lot, not a big day. He had a big run. But somehow South Carolina needs to line up and get 3-4 yards a go, because that's going to enable them to stay on the field and rest that good defense, which now we know beyond a shadow of a doubt is the strength of this team. So to me, as important as the points, they've got to find a way to be on the field and make first downs. And the easiest way to do that is running the football. So that's where they've got to get better.
Smitty, my last question for you. You talk about picking up blitzes. I've heard, not inside sources, but I've heard this week that LSU's really putting a big emphasis on blitz packages that they're going to show South Carolina, because LSU, frankly, from what I've heard, in Louisiana, they don't believe South Carolina can handle the blitz. Would you feel like that is what will make or break the game for South Carolina?
Well, I don't know if, that specifically. You'd have to ask somebody, like a true analyst or maybe a guy that played on the offensive line. But I will say this, what you're just talking about, you and I were in the press box watching South Carolina play Old Dominion. The offensive line looked confused at times, and they weren't all blitzes. Some of them were just stunts, but just different things that a defense might give you, a different look. And the offensive line was not always on the same page, either in the run game or in the pass game. So that offensive line didn't look like a cohesive unit in game 1. In game 2, I'm not sure how much of it was the offensive line's fault, but I know on at least 3 occasions I saw Lenore Sellers not see what he should have seen on a free blitzer from Kentucky. And on other occasions, I saw free runners come right through the middle, which makes you believe that the center and the guards are not on the same page. Now, you can get, we all know offensive linemen or analysts or former coaches that can dig into it more. What you and I see usually is just the end result. And the end result is South Carolina's offensive line doesn't always look like it's on the same page with each other. They're supposed to fit like a glove, right? 5 players playing as one unit. South Carolina doesn't always look like that. So I would tend to believe that exotic blitz packages in the development of this offensive line and in the development of Lenore Sellers, absolutely an issue. We'll see if they got that coached up this week, Monday through Thursday.
Smitty, do you have a lean on this game? Does South Carolina win? Do they lose and cover? Do they fail to cover the 7 points?
I'm going to say everything that, to me, makes me believe, everything that I know about just programs, this is the kind of game that LSU comes in and wins as a program. And South Carolina usually has trouble following up one successful week with another one. Now, you'd have to ask, is this LSU team, maybe they're coming apart at the seams a little bit. They didn't look great against Nicholls State. They didn't look great in an opening season loss against Southern Cal. And the South Carolina team seems to have played a lot better. But here's my concern. So what I will say, that the short answer to the question is, I think South Carolina covers, and it's a tight game. It's a one-possession game either way. Here's my fear for South Carolina. Let's say that defense does everything we expect them to do, and they play great, and Dylan Stewart and Kyle Kennard and Debo Williams all do their job again. Let's say LSU punts the football to South Carolina with 3 minutes left. Does that offense that you have seen in the first 2 weeks look capable of going down the field and getting a game-winning score against an SEC-level defense? And I don't know that they do. So until I see that, I'm going to take LSU to win the game, but I think it's tight. So if you're giving me, say, 7 points, I'll take South Carolina in 7 points. But if we're talking about who's going to win this game in the final minutes, and I think South Carolina's kicker is fine, Alex Herrera. It's not about Alex Herrera. It's about whether Lenore Sellers and this offense in this time of development, where they are in their infancy working together, if Dowell Loggins is ready to go 2-minute offense with Lenore Sellers, go down the field and get the game winner against a team in this circumstance. I'm not sure he is. But I'll say this, the atmosphere is going to be great.
Well,
fans will come through, all that. I'm a little worried about the offense.
You talked about Clemson's timing and when they played Clemson or played Georgia, when they played App State. I think if this game was played later on in the season, and like you were saying, with the development process of this offense, I think later in the season, South Carolina would be a home favorite against LSU. Matt Smith, Smitty, you're the best. Do us a favor before the show is over, before 7 o'clock. Text Cole with your name and your game and the spread of a team that you think will get the outright upset this weekend. We use the spreads from ESPN.com, and we will get you in this challenge, my friend.
Appreciate you, man.
Appreciate you guys. It won't be Wisconsin. That's a promise.
Very good. Thank you, Smitty. He's fantastic, man. Fantastic listen, fantastic follow, and appreciate him coming on the show. When we come back, a lot of shakeup in the SEC at the quarterback position at a big-time university. Who made a move? We'll get to that next in our Daily Wires on the Fan Upstate. lot happening out there in the sports world. Let's take a quick look at what's happening. These are our daily wires.
My mic was off.
I was going to wait and just let you do it again.
But I hit the button, so the real one played, and mine didn't, so I suck.
Can I? There you go. Can't start without the buzz.
I mean, come on, man.
The Atlanta Braves begin a 3-game homestand tonight with the Dodgers in Atlanta. Spencer Schwellenbach will start for the Braves, 7:20 first pitch. Braves are in third place in the NL East, 9 games back from the Phillies and 1 game back from the Mets, who are surging right now. It's got to be a tough time to be a Braves fan.
You said it best the other day, is football season.
Yep.
Sorry, Braves.
Joey Logano got the win last week in Atlanta. Watkins Glen will host the race this weekend. It's the second playoff race for the NASCAR playoffs. Tua Tagovailoa left Thursday night's 31-30 loss to the Buffalo Bills after sustaining a concussion in the third quarter, the third diagnosed concussion of his NFL career. There's no immediate timeline for his return. This has been the big question of the day, Cole. It's his third that we know about, so it's probably more like his 10th, and a bunch of other ones were like little ones. Should Tua hang it up?
That's a great question. I think we could spend 5, 10, 15 minutes on that.
Yeah.
Diesel, it's a decision that he has to make. I can't say whether, I don't know exactly, to your point, how many concussions he's truly had, but I will tell you this. He's got to be careful, man. He's got to be careful. This is you're at some point you're risking you
don't want to scramble your eggs.
Yeah,
man. I look at being an NFL player, but especially a quarterback, kind of like being a lifetime smoker. It's really hard to quit. It's really hard to quit. But Tua just keeps getting his bell rung, and it's like, dude, you're rich. Walk away. But,
and he got the new contract, so maybe that helps, right?
Now they're going to have to pay him, even if he retires now. They have to pay him regardless.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh, that's tough for the Dolphins, and of course Mike McCarthy handling this. McDaniel, handling this with just so much class, with the typical. Well, we got to let Tua make that decision, and if we make it based on his age, then that's not really in the best interest of Tua. Shut up, Mike McDaniel. You suck. I hate this guy. He's a smart guy, but I hate
He's
this
a nerd.
Guy. The Burns Rebels start their season 0-3 for the first time since 1996. They lost last night to Greer, 18-10. You said just 5 yards running the football last night. You're not going to win many games that way.
No, sir. You're not.
No.
And that's not a good formula.
No, and it snaps a Greer losing streak against Burns. It was 16 games long, dating back 24 years.
Yeah, not good. Not a good day for the Rebels.
Asia Wilson broke the WNBA single season scoring record just before the first half of the Las Vegas Aces game against the Indiana Fever Wednesday night. So finally, somebody breaking records against Caitlin Clark.
That's impressive.
Not Caitlin Clark breaking records against other people.
That's impressive, man. She's so good.
Yeah. And we were debating about this earlier this week when we found out that South Carolina would get College Game Day. It is official. Dawn Staley will be the guest picker for College Game Day on Saturday in Columbia.
Good pick, man.
Really interested to see what the weather's going to be like down there, how they're going to get this production off the ground, because it is massive what they do when they set it for game day.
No doubt.
And the weather is supposed to be pretty nasty.
There was nobody better. You and I talked about it. There was nobody better for them to pick. Forget Darius Rucker. I get people love him, but man, you got to go with Dawn.
Couldn't bring on Governor Foghorn Leghorn. He's there in Columbia. He's got nothing else to do.
It's got to be Dawn, man. She's got to be the pick. I'm glad it is. That's going to be tomorrow, rain or shine. That's going to be a fun atmosphere. It's been 10 years, man, since South Carolina's gotten game day.
Sticking with South Carolina, they announced this morning that they're looking for a new athletics director. Ray Tanner is going to be transitioning to a role as senior advisor to the president. That means if the president dies, he gets the role, right?
Oh,
isn't that how succession works? Yeah.
Not to laugh about death.
Yeah. But yesterday, Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, and San Diego State were announced that they will join Washington State and Oregon State in the new six-pack. That's what I'm calling it, in 2027. Going to be sitting on a lot of cash up there with Washington State and Oregon State, so they get to be picky about who it is they want now to become the 7th and 8th members. Auburn has benched Peyton Thorne for Saturday's game against New Mexico. Hank Brown will start. And lastly, another Georgia player has been arrested for driving recklessly in his car.
Is that like in the bye rules?
I guess. Georgia DB Daniel Harris was arrested shortly before midnight last night. Police charged him with 5 misdemeanors, including reckless driving, not wearing a seatbelt, operating an unregistered vehicle without a license plate, driving without proof of insurance, and having illegal window tints.
When Kirby Smart said, we want you guys to be fast, they took it the wrong way. All right, I put it on the Fan Upstate.
Not Fast and Furious.
That's right. I put it on the Fan Upstate Facebook page for you to give your predictions. It's time in the very next segment. South Carolina, LSU. My thoughts, Diesel's thoughts, your thoughts, predictions next. For the first time in 10 years, Diesel, the South Carolina Gamecocks are getting College Game Day. We know that ESPN's there, Pat McAfee's there. You just pointed out during the break, Shane Beamer's already been on today with Pat McAfee.
Prayers for all the bar owners in 5 points.
It's true.
Hurricane Pat is coming at you.
That might be a little bit of a hurricane itself. We'll have audio from Pat McAfee and Shane Beamer a little bit later in the show. So stay tuned for that. But it is time now. We've been asking you all day, all week since Wednesday to get your upset picks in. But now we ask you, Gamecock fans, who do you like? And I know some of you Gamecock fans may be a little biased, but we need your predictions for Saturday's game. We also posted it on our Facebook page at the Fan Upstate on Facebook. Diesel and I will give our thoughts. It's a huge game. You can let us know who you think will win and who you think will lose. 71307 is the text line. Start your text with the word fan. Phone lines open during this segment as well. 844-FAN-PHONE. That's 844-326-3663. Diesel, I'll tell you what I love about a game like this is here it is Friday at 5 o'clock, and I still have yet to – I know who I'm going to pick to win, but in terms of the score, I've been struggling with this. Up until an hour ago, I didn't know who I was going to pick to win the game. South Carolina LSU, to me, is a fascinating matchup. I think, we said last week, South Carolina winning on the road at Kentucky, that's a huge win. However, Diesel, this could be a magnificent win for Shane Beamer if he were to defend home field and take down Brian Kelly and LSU.
Well, yeah, he's got the entire sports world looking at him right now. He's on Pat McAfee's show, which is a massive, massive show. I don't care for it, but he's on it. Mm-hmm. Right on. Good for you, Shane. I mean, he's certainly going to be able to match the energy of Pat McAfee because Shane is an energetic, fun kind of head coach. So that is phenomenal recruiting tool right there, just being on that show. And then he's going to be on College Game Day tomorrow, where the entirety of the college football world is going to be watching. They produce all those fantastic vignettes that they show throughout the game. I mean, it's going to be a 3-hour commercial for the University of South Carolina, and that is invaluable, the amount of marketing that you get from those situations. And then if the South Carolina Gamecocks go out there and pull the upset, like you've been on the big stage, everybody's watching you, you go get that win. That is the icing on top of the cake, right? Like that is just a beautiful, beautiful moment for this South Carolina program. And you get it. You now feel a lot better going into some of these matchups that, you got a lot of top 10 teams on the schedule moving forward. You now feel really good going into the Texas A&M game. Yeah. You feel pretty good. Pretty good going into the Clemson game, right? If you can beat LSU, you got to feel pretty good going into that Clemson game later on this season. And all of a sudden, we're staring down a 7-win regular season, and we're staring down, an 8-win season if you win a bowl game. Man, that's huge for South Carolina.
It is. It would change not only the record, obviously it gives South Carolina a huge win. It would change the way South Carolina Gamecock fans look the rest of the season. When you have an outlook on the season, when the season starts, before the season even starts, Diesel, you and I, South Carolina fans, we all look at the schedule. We all say, okay, I think this will be the record. They're going to go 4-6, whatever, right?
Sure.
However, you go on the road and beat Kentucky, and then the following week you defend your home field and you beat LSU. All of a sudden, the entire outlook on the rest of the season, to your point, changes dramatically. And we're going to get to our thoughts on what it's going to take for South Carolina to win, our score predictions. I do want to go to this, though. Diesel, the LSU defense allows 24 points per game. That's 80th in college football. 371 total yards per game, which is 84th in college football. The Tigers have only had 2 sacks with 0 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery. They have to show more progress this game. They have a new defensive coordinator in Blake Baker, who was hired to fix what was a terrible run defense last year. He was at Missouri before. We talked to Matt Smith of Sports Talk Media Network earlier about the matchup between LSU's defense and South Carolina's offense. I do agree with Matt, with Smitty, that at some point I think South Carolina's offense is going to have to go make a statement drive. I just don't know that that's going to be enough. LSU's defense isn't great. I just don't know in this matchup against their defense and South Carolina's offense. I don't know that I've seen enough from Lenora Sellers yet to trust him fully.
No, you're very, very justified in not having a whole lot of trust in this offense. Yeah, they looked good last week against Kentucky. If you just look at the box score, right? If you don't go back and watch what happened in the third quarter of that game, South Carolina making some big defensive plays. Lenora Sellers was efficient enough, 10 of 14 in that game against Kentucky last week, threw for 2 touchdowns and a pick, but he's not putting up gaudy numbers, right? And that's a product of being a young quarterback. That's a product of this being your first season, your first SEC road game as the guy, right? So this needs to be a bit of a coming out party for Lenora Sellers. Go show us that you can take control and lead your team down the field when it really matters, right? Late in the second quarter as you're going into half, fourth quarter, if you're down or if it's close, you got to be able to make that comeback drive or that dagger drive that puts this thing away. So far, we haven't seen that. And Lenora Sellers has not been in a lot of positions, has not had a lot of opportunities to do that, obviously, because we know the South Carolina defense was real opportunistic against Old Dominion in that first game, a couple of picks late, sealed that game. So this is your chance, Lenora's, to go out there and show us that you are a guy who can go win a football game for your team.
On our Facebook page, Richard says LSU 35, South Carolina 10. Ooh, that's a big win. Not a close game at all there. LSU would obviously cover. Dalton on our Facebook page at the Fan Upstate says 24-10 LSU. Madcraft on the YouTube stream says 26-23 Gamecocks. That'd be well taken, Madcraft, by Gamecock fans. But I do agree with you. I'll say this. I think as good as Dylan Stewart is, as good as South Carolina's defensive line is, because we've said it several times, South Carolina's defense, especially their defensive line, the depth that they have this year, their ability to rotate guys in, as Shane Beamer talked about. This is the deepest defense he's had in 4 years at South Carolina. I do believe it'll keep this game close. I believe it'll keep this game somewhat low-scoring, Diesel. You asked Smitty the question earlier, how many points do they need, does South Carolina need to feel like they could get the win? He said 3 touchdowns, 21 offensive points. Do you feel like that would get the win for South Carolina, 21?
21, no, I don't. I don't. LSU, I think, has a good enough offense that, I mean, I guess I got to go ahead and give my prediction here. I'm seeing this one as like a 27-24 kind of game.
Okay.
With LSU winning the football game.
Wow, you and I aren't far off.
I think LSU is going to be able to score, right? I think this is one of those, all right, you piddled around for a couple of weeks with some lesser opponents if you're LSU, and now you got to buckle up that chin strap and go play, right? Now is when you actually start getting the team's full attention. We've talked how many times about, the hardest thing in college football is to get a bunch of 18, 19, 20-year-olds to focus in 12 times a year and to play efficient. And those are the teams that end up winning. If you can, the most often that you can get your team to buckle up, and somehow for the University of Georgia, they can only get them to buckle up on game day. Outside of game day, nobody wears a seatbelt. Nobody has an insured car. Nobody puts a tag on. Nobody can go the speed limit, right? But on game day, that team is strapped up, ready to go. And I think we're going to see LSU strapped up, ready to go this week. That is, unless our pilot friend, Dan B, is maybe turning the yoke just a little bit, kind of getting the LSU Tiger football team a little queasy on their way to Columbia. That's the that's such a That's such a random.
Did you set Dan up? Did you give Dan a little?
I suggested that he do it. Don't make him think the plane's going down or anything, but like
quick turn,
put a little fear in him.
Just a little turbulence.
Yeah, a little fake turbulence. Steer into it a little.
Why
bit.
are we circling Williams-Brice 4 times? But Diesel, the last thing I'll say before I give my prediction, and I'll get to the call in just a second from Tom. You brought up LSU's offense. Louisiana State averaged 32 points, which is 61st in college football, 401.5 yards, which is really good, 61st per game. I know 61st in the country isn't high, but 401 yards is a lot of yards.
Yeah.
311 passing yards.
It's a little skewed right now because everybody's playing FCS
right.
teams.
And there's only 2 games, right? 2-3 games. 90.5 rushing yards is what they're averaging. They're not running the football. When you look at their offense, that is the area of concern. They're able to throw the ball. 311 passing yards per game, just 90.5 rushing yards, but still 90 is not bad. Again, small sample size. The Tigers, led by junior quarterback Garrett Nussmeier, 610 passing yards, 75% completion percentage, and 8-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I think when you look at a lot of games, you and I do this, NFL, college, high school, a lot of times you and I pick based on the better quarterback. And I'll tell you, I haven't given my score yet, but I think Garrett Nussmeier is the better quarterback. And for that reason, I'm picking LSU.
I'm with you. Garrett Nussmeier has been through 2 games against weaker opponents. He's been very good. 600 yards plus through 2 games. So in my mind, you have to force Garrett Nussmeier to beat you. Stopping the run shouldn't be too difficult for South Carolina. They've been good against the run so far this season.
Yeah.
But the LSU run game has been non-existent. If you can shut that down, if you can do what Nicholls State and whoever they played in week 1
USC
were able to do, if you're able to do that, then you will effectively make Garrett Nussmeier one-dimensional, right? You'll force him to throw the ball. And obviously we've seen South Carolina, being able to be really opportunistic, ball hawking through the air. If you get a pick or 2 and you put yourself in a position where you've got a 14-point lead through the third quarter, you're sitting pretty at that point. That's what has to happen for South Carolina when you got to get a pick or 2.
So the way South Carolina's built, and we're going to get to Tom in just a second. Tom, we're coming to you. The way they're built, Diesel, with that defense, if you can play with a lead, if they can get a touchdown or, to your point, even a 2-touchdown lead, which I don't see happening, but if they could, then that allows the defense to play so much more freely. They're not having to press. You see really good defenses a lot, even in the NFL. They're good, but a lot of it has to do with the offense being good as well. They're going to have to show up on Saturday. 844-FAN-PHONE. That's the way you can get in touch with the show. If you want to get your prediction in, that's 844-326-3663. We have several predictions on the text line as well. We'll get to those. But first, here is Tom, who calls in on the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas Fan Phone. Tom, what's up?
What's up, guys? Seems like it was this time last week I called and I told you Gamecocks are going to dominate up in Lexington and finish 9-3. And, well, they did the first part of that. They dominated up in Lexington. And I'll give you this. LSU is a better team this week, but it ain't going to matter. It ain't going to matter. You know why?
Why?
There's a grown man named Dylan Stewart, and he's going to wreak havoc all day. And the Cocks are going to roll once again. And you know what that means? It'll be 3-0 and on the way to 9-3 in the college football playoff, guys. Y'all keep, not y'all, but all you Clemson fans, y'all keep hating. Y'all can't even score a touchdown on Georgia. So y'all celebrate your App State win. We're proud of you. You gotta have a bye week tomorrow for your tough ACC schedule. But y'all enjoy that. We're going to be sitting here tomorrow night at 3-0 and on our way to the college football playoff. I hope y'all have a great weekend.
Tom, before we lose you, before you have a heart attack, can you tell me, Tom, how are you so damned energetic at 5:15 on a Friday afternoon, man. You just kept rising and rising and rising with more and more and more. What's your secret, Tom?
Well, it's Friday afternoon. It's football season, and my wife's out of town. So, of course, I'm in a good mood. And the Gamecocks are going to win tomorrow.
All right.
Thanks for the call, Tom.
I just wanted to make sure Tom's heart was going to be okay. I wanted to make sure there was not too many Red Bulls in his system, no booger sugar up his nose.
What if he talks like that 24/7?
Maybe he's like a boat mechanic. Every boat mechanic I've ever met in my entire life talks exactly the way Tom does.
You think so?
Oh my God.
He is off the rails.
It's like not a
man.
single one of them wears hearing protection while they're working on a boat motor. So they just said, well, what you need is you need a new steering wheel, and you got to put a new fuel pump in the tank, and once you do that and you get the carburetor cleaned out, you'll be just fine.
I just hope his wife wasn't listening. Right? Tom's wife? Can somebody check?
Texter says, Tom does sound like he kisses his sister. His secret is amphetamines.
God.
Tom, are you going to allow that? Are you going to allow that kind of slurring? You know, this texter didn't give his name. I noticed that. You going to talk trash about one of our Tolos, you got to at least put your name on it, texter.
Matt Kraft said, bring in the heat. That guy absolutely screams at his TV.
Speaking of which, did you see the video of the Dolphins fan who called Tua the Hawaiian Daniel Jones?
No. God, no.
He was hanging out with a bunch of Bills fans watching the game. Everybody's decked out in their uniform, their jerseys and all that, right? And he's just getting madder and madder and madder. He says that effing Hawaiian Daniel Jones going to cost us the game.
That is the most disrespectful thing you could ever say. I'll give my prediction and score, but first, 587 on the text line, 71307. Can Tom have his own segment each week? I want to run through a wall with Gamecock excitement. Lefty Tiger was the one that sent the text. Diesel Lefty Tiger says, I hate a dang coot.
That's all we ask, Lefty Tiger. Just put your name on it. That's all we ask.
All right, let me think, Diesel.
So I said 27-24.
27-24.
And
you know what? I don't hate that.
I want to see what the over-under on this game is supposed to be.
Oh,
the
man,
over-under on
that.
this LSU game.
It is 48.5.
48. So that would put me at 51 points.
See, I think
so. That would be me taking the over.
Yeah, I don't know that it goes over.
So the weather right now is expected to just be cloudy.
Has it gotten better?
With slight chances of rain.
Okay, that's a lot
in
better.
Columbia around noon tomorrow. So I don't think weather is going to be a factor. Obviously, any of that can change as we still have that hurricane kind of shooting outer bands this way.
But that's a lot better of a forecast than it was 4 days ago. Diesel, I don't hate you going 27-24. I don't
LSU.
hate that. I don't hate that. I do think so. At the beginning of the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a little bit of the day, I thought I was going South Carolina. I'm going LSU to win, and I'm thinking it's going to be low scoring. I really do believe in South Carolina's defense. I'm going 24-14. LSU.
I'm gonna tell you, if South Carolina wins this game, then Dan B is not gonna have a return flight back to Baton Rouge.
Oh,
Brian Kelly's gonna slam his fist on the table so hard that the players can just hop on that water bottle and let Brian Kelly launch them all the way back to Baton Rouge.
Well, he might have a return flight, but it might not include Brian Kelly. I mean, really?
Oh, come on!
If they lose to South Carolina,
losing to South Carolina is a fireable offense. That's damn disrespectful.
Man,
that is disrespectful.
But what's LSU standards, though? I mean, you're losing to Southern Cal, losing to South Carolina.
Stop scheduling USCs and you'll be fine.
There you go. So I'm going 24-14. Oh, God, there's something about this game, man, that I don't like. There's something that's tricky about this game. I don't know what it is, but I'm going LSU wins tomorrow. I really wanted to pick South Carolina, but at the end of the day, I think South Carolina has LSU has the better quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier. I think Diesel, that's why I'm going with him.
When we come back, Cole, it's time for our weekend menu. We'll look at each time slot for games this weekend and pick our tastiest. You can only watch one game at a time for this weekend, each time slot. That's coming up next on The Fan Upstate. Several more of your upset picks have come through. Billy Ho, we got you with Oregon State over Oregon plus 16.5. Smitty, Matt Smith, you just heard him on these airwaves a little bit ago. He says Colorado State plus 7 over Colorado, or out, as they say it out there, Colorado. Lefty Tiger says he'll take Boston College plus 14.5 over Mizzou. Kevin Buggs wants the exact same game. He says plus 15.5. Remember, guys, we lock these spreads in on Wednesdays. So whatever the spread was at 3 o'clock on Wednesdays, that's what we lock in. No matter what you put down as the spread, we will lock it in. Everybody who picks the same game will get the same number of points. We got a tasty menu of games this weekend, Cole. A lot of good football on the table, on the menu. So we're going to pick a la carte from our noon games, the appetizers.
God, you're going to get me hungry.
The 3:30 games, those are our main courses.
Ooh.
The 7 o'clock games, that's the dessert, right? That's what everybody's waiting for, the dessert.
Sweet tooth.
And then, there's sometimes there's a little extra, right? There's the late night games, little midnight snack. You go back to the fridge for a midnight snack. How about that? So let's take a look, and I want to look at this from a perspective, from like a national perspective, not so much from a local perspective, because everybody will always pick the South Carolina game at that point, right? But that's maybe not the most fascinating game of a given time slot. So we're going to kind of pick a la carte here. You're not picking a main course with a side and a dessert it's already paired with. We're just going to pick a la carte from each time slot. So here we go with the appetizers, the noon slate of games. I'm going to give you 3 options to choose from. Good sir. These are our specials. These are our appetizers. Number 4, Alabama at Wisconsin. Bama 16-point favorites with an over-under of 49.5. A little bit lopsided. Yeah. I get it, but you also get something really tasty in Alabama, right? Sure. You get a high quality ingredient in that game, and maybe something that's a little bit lacking. It's like having oysters on a cracker. The oyster is the best part. The cracker is just, it's just cracker. It's just there. Okay, number 2 game that you can choose from out of the noon time slot. How about number 16, LSU at South Carolina? LSU 6.5-point favorites in this game. Dan B is flying the team. So that's a little extra little flavor there for you Gamecock fans. One of our Tolos currently has Brian Kelly and the entire team's life in his hands. Probably right now. They're probably mid-flight right now.
You would think so.
We got Memphis at Florida State. Florida State 7-point favorites in that game. Could you imagine if Mike Norvell starts this season 0-3? They might not let him coach anymore. They may fire him on the spot. And then finally, number 24, Boston College at number 6, Missouri. The Tigers are a 15.5-point favorite. Missouri, maybe a dark horse to go sneak in and win the SEC. Which one of those? I'm only going to give you one. You can only pick one. Which one of those is the tastiest, most enticing game to you?
Well, I'll tell you this. Looking at the appetizers in the noon slate, it's the best slate all day. It is by far the best slate.
You think? I don't know.
This is the toughest.
There's some good main courses in there.
Man, you're asking me to choose one of 4 between Alabama and Wisconsin, which so I'm fascinated with that game simply because I want to know if Alabama just had a hiccup through the first 3 quarters last week with South Florida, or if what we saw last week in the first 3 quarters will be a trend that will not be a welcome trend for the fans of Alabama under Kalen DeBoer. So that's why that one fascinates me. Obviously, as you said, LSU South Carolina local flavor, we're going to talk about it. We're going to be interested in it. But from a Nationals perspective, I'll eliminate that one off the bat. I don't think nationally, I don't think nationally LSU South Carolina moves the meter quite like the other ones. Now, that leaves Memphis FSU, and it leaves Boston College, Missouri.
Yeah, Memphis FSU is the only one of these games that does not feature a ranked team.
Which is crazy because that's one of my final 2. From a national perspective, I'm axing LSU South Carolina. Wow. I'm axing Boston College, Missouri. I don't think Boston College yet. If they were to win, things might be different. But yet, I don't think they move the meter yet for the national media. That leaves a game that you just said, Diesel, features 0 top 25 ranked opponents. Memphis and FSU. Why in the world would I be concerned about a team in FSU who's still looking for the first win? Well, simply put, if the ship sinks, we all watched the Titanic. We love that movie. It's one of the probably the most popular movies ever. I want to watch the ship sink. However, it's not as intriguing as Alabama-Wisconsin. If Alabama-Wisconsin, Diesel, if that game gets to the fourth quarter and Wisconsin has them on the ropes, even if Bama wins, but it's close, the national narrative on Alabama is that, boy, this isn't the same Bama team we're used to seeing.
They'll call it a failed hire.
They will, absolutely. For me, this one was a tough one at noon, but I'm going Alabama.
Interesting choice. Memphis is 5th in others receiving votes. If they beat Florida State at their house, there's a good chance, obviously, Memphis jumps up into the top 25, and they are maybe on a trajectory to become the group of 5 representative in the playoff.
Okay.
They got to get past Boise State first because Boise State is listed ahead of them, even though Boise State has a loss. They lost on the road last week against Oregon. I'm going to go, Cole, with Boston College at Missouri, number 24, number 6. Boston College is that like blue collar, smash mouth, Bill O'Brien, get a little bit of a broken nose, a little cut on the cheek. Don't matter. We're here to play football. We're not here to win a beauty contest. But Missouri, on the other hand, little flash, little flair, little debonair. Eli Drinkwitz is, I think, a brilliant football mind. And can that brilliant football mind beat a team that's coming in with nothing but murder on their minds? And that's what I'm really fascinated to see. They're calling for a little bit of a high-scoring game. Over-under on this one is set at 53.5. I'm going Boston College, Missouri, just because it's such a interesting flavor there, right? With 2 different styles of play coming together on the field. So I'm going out of the noon slot, my appetizer for the day. I can only watch one of these games. I'm taking Boston College, Missouri.
Ooh, yep. I think it's going to be intriguing, but we'll see. I hope it's not a blowout.
All right, let's move on to the main courses. You're feeling good, right?
Yep.
Your taste buds are going. Maybe you guys salivating in the mouth a little bit for the main course. The 3:30 kickoff games. I'm going to give you 3 different options to choose from here. We're only making 3 things today. You got to choose one of these. We got number 9 Oregon versus Oregon State. Oregon State 2-0. Oregon 16-point favorites here. It's a rivalry game. It's a chance for Oregon State to throw a couple of your number 1s at the team that left them behind in the Pac-2. Next up, you could choose from Tulane versus number 15, Oklahoma. The Sooners are 13-point favorites in this one, but Oklahoma has not looked good.
Yeah.
And Tulane looks pretty solid. And number 3, I'm going to give you Washington State at Washington, another one of those rivalry games. No ranked teams in this one. Which one are you going with?
This one's easy for me. Oregon State. Oregon hasn't looked great. They're 2-0. So, hey, you're 2-0. That's all that matters. This is a rivalry game. I don't think Oregon State gives them a run, but through the first half, this one may be a little tricky. So for the main course, again, I got full on the appetizers. I could have probably did a Applebee's special where it's only appetizers and been perfectly happy, but I'll go Oregon State for the main course.
I like that one as well. I like the opportunity for the Beavs 2-0 to really stick it to their in-state team that they used to be tied at the hip until you weren't. And, they just split on you. Please, Oregon State, knock off Oregon. They have looked awful 2 weeks in a row. How long can they tempt fate, right? How long can the Oregon Ducks tempt fate? So I'm with you. 3:30. I'm gonna take a big heap and bite of Oregon versus Oregon State. Moving on to the 7:00 games, Cole. This is our dessert phase. Okay. This is some people go a little light on the main course so that they can have that big dessert. We got number 1 Georgia versus Kentucky. Georgia 22-point favorites in that one. We've got Colorado at Colorado State. The Buffaloes 7-point favorites here. Colorado State lost to Texas 52-0 in week 1. Colorado has been tempting fate. They barely beat North Dakota State. They looked bad against Nebraska last week. But obviously there's still, I think, a little juice in that storyline about Prime. And then we got Maryland versus Virginia, an old ACC matchup. The 7 o'clock slate, not particularly fantastic tomorrow. Yeah. Would you rather just watch the number one team in the country beat up on somebody?
So this fits me well because this literally, what you've got describes me to a T. When I go, let's say I go to a nice restaurant, I don't eat dessert. I'd rather have more steak, more potatoes, more appetizers.
You got to order that 16-ounce steak. There's no room for dessert.
More bread, more whatever. And then, hey, forget the dessert. I like dessert, but dessert is overrated. Okay? I'd rather have more meat and potatoes. So this fits well because the dessert menu here is not the best.
Yeah.
You know what? It's Colorado State without question because of Deion.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, Georgia, Kentucky is going to be a bloodbath.
Maybe we could actually maybe find out a little bit more about that South Carolina team and the game he played last week. If Kentucky is they're not going to win this game.
No.
But if Kentucky is able to put up, 2-3 touchdowns, then to me that looks like South Carolina just absolutely handled a pretty good Kentucky offense.
Sure. Give me Colorado State. That one's very intriguing to me. I like it. I want to see if Deion gets booted.
Billy Bob texts in, by the way, and says, my upset pick is the bye week over Clemson.
Oh, wow.
Billy
classy.
Bob.
Really classy, Billy Bob.
Billy Bob, I don't know if you're playing this game. I don't know if you're on the leaderboard right now, but we do need your real pick because if not, that will count as a -2. Okay. That will count as a -2. So here in here in the 7 o'clock, I'm actually going with Georgia, Kentucky. I'm over Deion Sanders. I'm over Colorado.
Yeah, but what if they lose? Like that, right?
They're just going to lose, right? They're going to lose, but I think it's going to be an ugly football game. They're actually playing a team that has roughly the same amount of talent as them. Shadur is great, right? Travis is great, but on the whole, I think they're probably fairly equal. I'm going with Georgia, Kentucky because I'm more intrigued as far as, that South Carolina, Kentucky game. Could you imagine if Kentucky actually looks good against Georgia? It looks decent.
Make Clemson look bad.
Make Clemson look really bad. I think there's a lot we can learn about both Clemson and South Carolina from Kentucky against Georgia. And then finally, Cole, this is the late night slate of games. This is your 9 p.m. and later kickoffs. This is kind of that second trip to the box, right? You go back to the fridge. You see, there's actually a little bit of that steak left over. I forgot I had this much. The late night seconds, again, not a particularly strong set of games here after 9 o'clock, but we got Rice against Houston, in-state matchup, maybe something intriguing for you there. And then San Diego State at Cal.
Yeah.
Another in-state team.
Not the best options there, Chef, but I'll go San Diego State Cal simply because Cal just beat Auburn, and maybe Cal's better than we thought. Maybe they're a little bit better than we thought. So I'll go San Diego State Cal.
Well, Josh Pate has a saying, you can't lose to food, but Houston sucks this year. God, what a horrible time to fall apart when you're coming into the Big 12. The answer is San Diego State Cal. I love those Aztec jerseys. Those look so good. So, and I also love G5s taking down P5. So, give me the San Diego State Cal game. My recommendation will ultimately, Cole, eat that big main course, just like you said, savor it, skip dessert, don't even take a doggy bag home. Just leave it at the restaurant. It's not going to get any better.
All right, in case you missed it, Pat McAfee had Shane Beamer on today. Also a quick snippet from Kirk Herbstreit talking about the Gamecocks fan base. You don't want to miss this audio next. It's a big day tomorrow and today in Columbia as College Game Day, ESPN, Pat McAfee, the whole crew is on the scene, on the ground in Columbia. Shane Beamer already did an appearance today on the Pat McAfee show. There was some talks with Kirk Herbstreit about the South Carolina fan base. And then tomorrow, Dawn Staley, the guest picker. It's going to, Diesel, you said it earlier, it's going to be a big day. A big chance for South Carolina to showcase the university, the football program, and then some new news with Ray Tanner announcing that he's stepping down today. Shane Beamer was on with Pat McAfee earlier today. Here's a quick snippet of the old ball coach, Shane Beamer, Pat McAfee.
If you saw the pick section, I knew we were coming to South Carolina.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I was at the stadium, obviously, when you were making the picks, getting ready to go. But then you endeared yourself to a lot of Gamecocks, pretty much all of Gamecock
I love
Nation.
socks.
As I know you do.
Who doesn't?
And when you made that pick, there were a lot of people that had your back and are excited to see you here tomorrow because of that pick.
So in Charlotte, last year, whenever we had game day for North Carolina, South Carolina, I had no idea. I thought it was going to be because Charlotte, right? North Carolina. I had no idea about this fan base. And then once you start looking at your roster, and obviously South Carolina has produced some of the greatest football players of all time in your own backyard here. But then this Dylan Stewart guy.
Yeah.
Hey, he's a real deal. 6'6", 248.
Yeah.
Freshman. Edge rusher. And he's got this lean and dip. I mean, whenever you recruit somebody like that, you see somebody like that, you immediately think to yourself, this guy's a game changer. And did you expect it this quickly with him?
I don't know if I expected it this quickly. We knew he was really talented when we recruited him. But then when he got here and he was able to go through spring practice, I mean, you get into spring practice and you realize pretty quickly this guy's pretty special. And then watching him over the summer, the way he developed, and then he had a great preseason. And we got a lot of other really good players in that defensive end edge room with him. I don't know if I expected him to do what he's done the first 2 weeks. And there's a lot to continue to improve on. And that's what's exciting about him and the rest of our team is we can be a lot better than what we showed last week, and him included.
I have
You know what's fascinating about that, Diesel? I believe that on a show like Pat McAfee, ESPN, those guys go to South Carolina. They have to do quick research, right? Find out who the players are, who the playmakers are, who the stars are. But when you watch South Carolina, the fascinating part is Dylan Stewart's popping off the roster. I don't think anybody coming into the season thought that everybody would be talking about Dylan Stewart as more than they'd be talking about QB1 and Lenora Sellers.
Yeah, it's huge to get to get big play out of a young guy like that immediately, right? Especially when it comes at a position group that you didn't expect yourself to be particularly strong at this year. There's a reason why you're starting a freshman. Part of the reason is because he's really talented, right? Part of the reason is because you didn't have anybody who's a junior or senior who has that kind of talent playing that position. So all credit to what the South Carolina staff has done to get Dylan Stewart to this point as quickly as they have. I mean, I think a lot of people, we had a lot of Tolos texting in the last couple of weeks and leading up to the season, obviously, claiming that Dylan Stewart was going to be some world-beating quarterback. And he may still turn out to be that guy. But after 2 weeks, he hasn't been. He's been serviceable enough to get you 2 wins. But now is when it starts to get real. And now is when he has to take that big step up. And, I'm excited for him and for this opportunity to look really good against this LSU secondary.
Texter from the 344 says, so amped for tomorrow. I hope Beamer has the guys ready to go. We need to have a great showing. I think there's a lot of pressure. I think there's a lot of pressure for South Carolina because of what Smitty said earlier, Diesel, Matt Smith from Sports Talk Media Network. South Carolina's had, how we talked about Clemsoning? South Carolina's had an MO that in years past, after they win a big game, we all know what's to follow, right? It's usually a letdown game. I remember very vividly when South Carolina beat Alabama. The very next week, guess who they lost to? Kentucky. Not a good Kentucky team. South Carolina's always been a team that it feels like as a program, to Smitty's point, after a big win, they just can't follow it up with continued success. And, last week was a statement. There's no doubt about that. But being able to win one game is nice, but being able to stack 2 back-to-back performances, that shows consistency in a program that I think would be one of the biggest points of emphasis, one of the biggest marks of consistency for Shane Beamer at South Carolina.
Yeah, how often do we talk about just the inconsistent nature of this football program as a whole? You can look at it from each individual position group, the inconsistency at quarterback. I know the last 2 years, you finally had some consistency and some good play out of Spencer Rattler. Not elite play, but good play out of Spencer. The inconsistency of the offensive line, the inconsistency of what the defense has been able to do. And then obviously that, you start stacking those things up. That's when you have those up and down and up and down and up and down performances. When you play your best possible football, you can beat great football teams, as we saw them beat Tennessee and Clemson back-to-back weeks a couple of years ago. But it's really hard to do. It's like singing a song in a round. Eventually everything lines up and everybody's singing the same words at the same time. But then, this thing starts to cycle out of control and everybody's singing something different at different times.
It's going to be interesting, man. I don't know if there's been this much anticipation for a South Carolina game. You know what? I'm fired up for it, man. And if I'm fired up for a South Carolina game, that should say something. I don't know that there's been this much anticipation and excitement. I think it's a great opportunity for South Carolina to make a statement win. And boy, can I not wait tomorrow at noon. I wish it was 3:30, but it's noon.
When we come back, let's talk NASCAR with Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer. He covers NASCAR. He covers the Charlotte 49ers, all kinds of things.
And guess where he is tonight?
Where is he?
In South Carolina covering high school football.
How about that?
Yeah.
How about that? That's coming up next on the Fan Upstate. I'm excited to talk to our next guest because I need to know his secret of having as much energy and as much drive to cover as many different sports and teams as he does. Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer joining us here on the Fan Upstate. He covers Charlotte football. He's covering high school football tonight, and he is our resident NASCAR expert. Number one, Shane, we appreciate you being on the show today. And what's your secret? Is it just lots and lots of Red Bull, or do you somehow find a way in that busy schedule to get a full 8 hours of sleep every night?
I don't know about the full 8 hours, but, when you get to work around sports, you be around sports as much as you can, right?
That's right. No doubt about it. Tell our listeners, Shane, where you're headed tonight, man.
We've got Rock Hill Zone, Northwestern, and South Point battling it out at 7:30 tonight at South Point High School. The Stallions, can they take down Northwestern? We'll see, but this Trojans team is a good one. Looking to stay unbeaten. Very excited for this matchup.
Shane, we bring you on because you are the absolute best when it comes to covering NASCAR. And NASCAR is such a unique sport in the fact that, you come up through a whole different set of ranks to be a NASCAR driver. When you play football, you play in high school, and then you go play in college, and then you go play in the NFL. You wrote a really interesting article about Harrison Burton's early years as a lacrosse player. Have you noticed in particular any correlation between NASCAR drivers and other sports they played really young before they kind of took the path into motorsports?
Appreciate your kind words about that story, and it's something that you don't see that much because of how niche motorsports is. People grow up in some form of racing and end up hoping to, and some people make it to the Cup Series. But when you have people who have backgrounds in other sports, the extent of it seems to be guys like Denny Hamlin who grow up around other sports, like other sports, or a fan of other sports, and then figure out as such a prominent person in this sport how to push it all forward. But somebody like Harrison Burton, being a young guy who was growing up in Huntersville, Jeff Burton never wanting to just force him to be a racer, it allowed Harrison to, on his own, realize he wanted to become a race car driver like his uncle and dad did, but that he grew up like a normal kid having those normal experiences. And I think we haven't seen much of that. Like most of these drivers, they have these really niche ways that they grew up in areas where they were the one person who wanted to be a racer and then became a race car driver. Now, as you start to have more and more people kind of get into the sport, especially in areas like the Charlotte area, not even just, some kid played basketball growing up, but that Harrison Burton had a special relationship with the sport of lacrosse throughout high school.
Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer joining us right here on the Fan Upstate. Shane, good to have you, man. When we talk about last week's race in Atlanta, the Quaker State 400, Joey Logano was the winner. Joey, a little late push, if you will, toward the playoff, and a really good win for his team to start off the round of 16. What do you take away from Joey Logano, who I would classify, Shane, as someone in the same conversation as Brad Keselowski, as since the breakup of Team Penske, just hasn't been the same driver that we used to see?
Is a two-time champion, though, and that means that he's found a way to get it together in the playoffs, not once but twice now, in 2018 and then in 2022. A year ago, another strong year for the driver of the 22 car, and then this year, Joey Logano getting the win at Nashville when he needed to, and then that is a big win early in the playoffs. Not just lock him into the round of 12, but also, he's not a bad driver, and the idea is that he's figured it out when we get to the playoffs. This year, with the other Fords in the playoffs, and we see how Fords have success later on in the year, so we'll see how much Penske puts into the Logano team itself throughout the playoffs this year in particular. But I think that it shows us that Joey Logano is still here. He is still one of the previous champions in the sport who is a top contender to win week in, week out. And you get guys like Brad Keselowski, like you said, when you see them having a shot to win, he's a previous champion. But on the flip side, even Martin Truex Jr., a year like this, it's his farewell tour. You figure that Martin would have ended up in victory lane a couple of times. And instead, he just hasn't been able to put it together. And And you realize that even though he won that championship in 2017, just doesn't have that necessarily, first off, just the name cachet that another driver retiring would have, but still throughout this season we haven't seen him be able to put it together later on. But Logano, a winner, and I think it shows a bit about Ford and Penske in the playoffs that they are back and they are here, and that Joey Logano is still the two-time champion we know him as.
Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer covers NASCAR, joining us here on the Fan Upstate. NASCAR's at Watkins Glen this weekend, a road course. What do drivers tell you about the challenges they face at road courses versus the ovals? Do they ever tell you things like it's much more mentally exhausting having to focus on so many turns? I feel like at an oval, I know you're going 150, 70, 200 miles an hour, but it feels almost like you can get into a rhythm, but you can't really do that when you're at a road course.
It feels like even on ovals, because every turn, every straightaway, they're going as fast as they're going, the driver's so in control. And then that allows for these road courses, you really have to know the course. And that's a big thing that is always discussed about practice and qualifying on a road course versus anywhere else. You have to, when you figure out how an oval is, and you figure out the banking and the turns, and like you said, it's kind of a different version of the same game. And then when you have a road course, you got to know, instead of just that's how you handle turn one, however turn one is, and turn two is, and turn three is, and turn four is, you've got turn 11, which is distinct chicane in this spot like this, and turn 13 is like this. And it could allow for some of these rovals where it's just a lot of wrecks and a weird, unpredictable race. And it could also see some of the best racing that we have seen. And having a race like this in the playoffs now with Watkins Glen, we could see a lot happen this week. But that's the biggest thing about this for the drivers. It's just so much more, like you said, of just each step, each turn, each straightaway on any oval is so much for every driver. And on a road course, you only complicate that. It really just intensify the whole thing.
Shane, it's crazy fascinating to me that while NASCAR starts their playoff format in Atlanta last weekend, that wasn't even like the biggest news. People were still talking about 2311 and their holdout of the charter agreement more than they were the actual race. Dale Jr., on his podcast, Dale Jr. Downloads, said he was very surprised by Denny's holdout, Denny and Michael Jordan's holdout. What do you make of it? Is there any sense to be made, or is this more strategic in your mind?
No, it's a really big deal. And the reality is that every NASCAR team has been wanting since the beginning of this season to reach an agreement with NASCAR. And the reality is, you'd think that would there's all this contract negotiations, it would take a while. But the reality is that Michael Jordan summed it up like this in his story with the New York Times, not The Athletic, but the actual New York Times, the only interview he did before Tyler Reddick had won the regular season championship at the end of the season recently, that he simply said, we're not united, and it's not good. It's a really bad situation that basically NASCAR is trying to move forward one way, the teams want their share because of what they bring to the sport, and then you throw in that you have somebody with the star power that Michael Jordan has. Think about it. Can any human tell Michael Jordan what he's going to sign or not? Like, of all humans out there? And so NASCAR had been essentially, they sent something to the teams that had the language that pretty much said, sign it or you'll lose your charters. And people like Roy Hendricks of the world and the Joe Gibbs of the world, the Roger Penske's of the world, felt compelled, and the wording they used to the Associated Press, they felt coerced and threatened to sign it because they felt like NASCAR actually put them in a position where they just said, okay, sign this or we'll take away your charters. The two teams that did not sign that were 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. And simply put, Front Row Motorsports, the team that Michael McDowell drives for, Bob Jenkins, the owner, just significantly lacks any star power that 2311 has, with Michael Jordan and his right-hand man Curtis Polk and Denny Hamlin being the ones who were running that show. And they actually did not agree to that contract from NASCAR that, again, every other team felt that threatened to sign. But Michael Jordan said, no, I'm Michael Jordan. I'm not going to agree to this. And it feels like what NASCAR wants to do is the way they work with somebody like that. They just want to eventually get Michael. The point is, sum it all up with this: 23-11 will end up getting the deal and revenue and all that it wants because Michael Jordan will say and negotiate what he has to negotiate, being Michael Jordan.
Do you see any long-term massive change benefit for the sport as a whole? Now, maybe not those teams that already signed the contract. The ink is on the paper, right? There's not much you can do about their deal at this point. But on the whole, will that have a positive effect for teams in the future?
I think it should, because I think it's going to – the teams want to have their power. They want to be a part of the sport. And, of course, NASCAR being the governing body is not going to do anything it can to – before it gives the teams that much of their own power. And I think that having owners in the sport like Coach Joe Gibbs, who came from the NFL world and now is so respected for pushing NASCAR forward in the ways he did with Toyota. You have guys like Rick Hendrick do everything he's done, and other people establish similar, smaller, or similar sized teams, and now even Stewart Haas Racing, team just as big, already disbanding. It's going to allow for owners like Jordan, owners like Pitbull, to come into this sport and figure out ways to push it forward. And then we'll start to see teams have – the teams that have 4, maybe even 5, 6 charters in the future will be teams that are owned by these people who, again, just act a little bit differently.
It's fascinating, man, when you look at the charters, because the sport of NASCAR, Shane, is set up unlike any other sport where, without those, it just allows kind of a freedom that other sports don't. So it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that. When you look at the Go Bowling at the Glen race this weekend, not sure how I feel about that name, but as Diesel said earlier, in New York at Watkins Glen, what do you think is the key for a lot of these teams as they're trying to rack up these points as well as dodge and avoid wrecks with the guys who are just racing for money?
But, it's a playoff race, and so it's not just about winning, but also about finishing, about points, and even for those guys who aren't playoff drivers, because it's a road course where if you don't fancy yourself as a road course guy, you might just not think you have as much of a shot to win, and then might end up having a strong finish when everybody else wrecks. So I saw an interesting stat today, though, that of all drivers in the Cup Series, who has driven the most miles is Daniel Hemrick. Because even though Hemrick has not had close to even a real great finish, he has managed to never really wreck out of a race and just always ride around. And I think that now we're getting to that point in the season where you're going to start to potentially – last year we saw A.J. Allmendinger win the Charlotte Roval in the playoffs. And I think that this week at Watkins Glen, we might not see a Justin Haley or even an SVG win on a road course the way they can sometimes. I think that at Watkins Glen, the playoffs, what we could see is a lot of different strategy across the field and even more of an unpredictable winner than we've had. This is a place where Chase Elliott got his first win. It's a place where any of these road course legends have made their names. So a lot can happen with Watkins Glen being in the playoffs, and many different strategies will be at play throughout the field on Sunday.
Shane Connick, NASCAR reporter for the Charlotte Observer. Shane, I'm going to ask you an odd question here. Which driver surprisingly drives the most boring daily driver? Who has the most boring daily driver car?
Well, that's the thing. I really don't know much about what these drivers drive outside of when they're racing. So I would be really curious about that myself. I don't want to allege anyone does anything because I can't confirm that anyone drives some of the things here.
Who seems like they drive a Toyota Camry? And I'm not asking like if guys on the Toyota team drive a Toyota Camry, but it's a boring A to B everyday car. Who seems like a Toyota Camry type of guy?
Even though he's a Ford driver, I don't know. I wouldn't be shocked if a guy like Noah Gragson just drove a Toyota Camry. I mean, he just very calm, very chill, very, not too loud on anything. And I could see that he probably wouldn't care a whole lot which exact car that he was just driving.
Hey, Shane, Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, man. My last question before we let you go. You at the Charlotte Observer work with some fine Carolina Panthers reporters. Are you guys getting a pay bump, a pay increase to go cover this football team?
Wouldn't that be something? It feels like the other way around.
As bad as they are, though.
Yeah.
Very surprising. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Especially that week 1 game down in New Orleans. I mean, just no signs of anything. I mean, you go all off season. You bring in a couple, whatever, and just had it all end up in that. Derek Brown then get hurt. Just could not have gone much worse for the Carolina Panthers.
So, I don't know how much you've had FaceTime with David Tepper, how much you've been around the guy, or just observing from afar. What do you think gets under his skin worst? The fact that tickets are selling for as low as 90 cents a pop. Yeah. Sheena Quick tweeted out earlier this week that she had heard a report that somebody had bought 2 tickets to the Panthers-Chargers game for $1.80, or just not selling the tickets at all. Like, what's more embarrassing to Dave?
That's a great question, and I would say it is more embarrassing to have an empty stadium, because if people are buying cheap tickets, they're going out of their way to buy cheap tickets. I almost feel like if tickets are $1.80, people might be more likely to say, oh, I'm just sitting around in Charlotte, I'll go sit around at the Panthers game, than if tickets were a normal price and nobody went. So I think right now you need butts in those seats.
I'm with you, Shane. It's a bad spot to be if you're the Carolina Panthers. Hey, man, we appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you again soon, man. Have fun tonight.
Thanks, guys. Great talk with you guys.
That's Shane Connick of the Charlotte Observer. Always a fantastic interview, and he is he's on the way to Rock Hill. You know, Charlotte kind of bleeds down Diesel to that northwestern Rock Hill area.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, it's a different state, so it's fascinating. But I guess the Observer covers.
Yeah.
What do you call that? You know, we call the upstate. What do you call like Charlotte and then the Rock Hill?
Rock Hill's not a suburb, but it kind of is in a way.
Right?
It kind of is. It's in the different. I mean, I guess it's still within the Charlotte Observer's coverage area. I don't know if, in the modern media landscape, it's so hard to keep track of what newspapers are alive and doing something. But does the Rock Hill, is there like a Rock Hill Gazette?
There's a Rock Hill
paper?
There is,
okay.
absolutely.
Well,
yep.
I mean, still, even if you have a Rock Hill Gazette or Times or whatever you call it, the Charlotte Observer is the newspaper basically for the entire state of North Carolina. Sure, I know Raleigh has their own newspaper. Asheville has its own newspaper. But most people, go towards the Charlotte Observer first.
Big dogs is what you're saying.
It's the big dog newspaper. Yeah.
The big dog on the block. All right. We'll go around the NFL in the very next segment. Week 2, the biggest games. Carolina Panthers predictions. Do they score a touchdown? That's terrible, isn't it? That's terrible. I've got to stop. All that and more next on the Fan Hub stage. Week 2 of the NFL season is here. Started last night, actually, but that wasn't really a game. 31-10 for the Buffalo Bills over the Miami Dolphins. But, Diesel, before we get to Week 2 around the NFL, I have a little trivia for you.
Mm-hmm.
You're usually pretty good at trivia. I want you to guess what city in America, and I got this, let's see, earlier today. This is in a press release that I got not long ago. What city, think big city because there's a lot of cities. What big city in America produces the most current NFL players than any other city?
Well, obviously New York City, not a ton of talent comes out of New York.
Yep.
Probably not LA either, because you don't hear much about high school football coming out of LA in LA County.
You're doing good so far.
It's possible that it's Chicago area just because, corn-fed Midwestern boys, a lot of defensive linemen, offensive linemen up there. I'm going to guess, though, that the answer is Atlanta, Georgia.
Ooh,
because
Atlanta,
so
Georgia.
much talent comes out of Georgia.
So you know what? That is a good guess. However, it is incorrect, but not by many.
Is it Dallas?
It is Miami,
Miami.
Miami, Florida, Diesel. There are currently 17 players in the NFL that reside from Miami, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Las Vegas, Nevada is 2. Would
What?
you have guessed that? Las Vegas, 16 players from the city of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Oh, okay, so Miami makes sense because of IMG Academy.
It does make sense.
A lot of players get drawn to IMG Academy. That's just outside of Atlanta, outside of Miami. So,
And by the way, Atlanta was 4th on the list at 14, so you weren't
so
far.
who's 3?
3
Dallas?
is Bradenton, Florida, which is basically
Bradenton.
Tampa.
Okay.
Tampa, Florida area.
Oh, sorry, IMG is in Bradenton. Where's
That's
all this
right.
talent coming out of?
Miami, man.
Miami.
All right,
Jeez.
you did good on the city. The state with the most active NFL players in the NFL right now.
Where they grew up or where they went to college?
Where they went, grew up.
Where they grew
Where
up.
they're from. Yep.
I'm going to say Alabama.
Texas.
I was that close to saying Texas.
190 current NFL,
Wow.
active NFL players were born in the state of Texas. Now, you said IMG. Do you know which high school in America produces the most current NFL players in the NFL?
Is it IMG?
It is IMG. 14 Diesel. 14 current NFL players graduated from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Is that not unbelievable? 14. And again, that's not really a high school. That's more like, an all-star team. Can I call it that? I mean, it is. It's not really a high school. So to say it's a high school, okay, last one for you. You guessed, or I told you Texas had 190 current active NFL players. South Carolina has how many? Again, from the state in terms of growing up.
Born and raised.
How many active NFL players are from the state of South Carolina?
I'm going to think about this while you're picking up that call. I'm going to say the answer is between 25 and 50.
Yes, you're correct.
Hey.
It is 32.
All right.
That's not bad. It's
All
not
right.
last on the list.
Yeah.
32.
We're not producing a lot of high school talent here.
32, well, not compared to Texas, 190.
Yeah.
I mean, that's unbelievable. And by the way, Florida, 176 active players, California, 168.
I'll bet you the city of Houston produces more 5-star players per 5-year stretch than the entire state of South Carolina.
6. Okay, so 13. Okay, you're going to do this here. 13 times, what'd you say, 5? Yep,
Yeah.
It would be. You're right. 65.
Oh, my God.
That's correct.
65 blue chip guys coming out of Houston every year? Or
Every
5
5.
years?
Every 5.
God.
Yep, every 5. Which is on average, which is pretty impressive for one city, right?
Yeah.
But Miami,
Well,
Florida.
Houston's also huge.
Houston is huge. You're right. Let's go to the phones before we get into the NFL conversation. 844-FAN phone, 844-326-3663. And Diesel, I don't know how we're having this conversation, how we're talking to this Tolo, DB, But DB, are you in the air right now?
Yes. No.
I know.
You get cell service up there, so they're
Unfortunately,
lying to us. The airplane mode is BS.
What's up, man?
No, fortunately, I got them here safe. There was a little turbulence on the way in, so you can be a little happy.
All right.
So
all right.
DB, for those that don't know that just tuned in, DB's a Tolo, listener of the show, pilot, as Diesel said earlier in this program, and he flew LSU from Baton Rouge to where did you fly him into?
Right here, Columbia.
Columbia, man. How about that?
Wow.
I like it. Well, so a good flight. I mean, did you get to see Brian Kelly?
Oh, like briefly. There's rules and whatnot. That mostly the teams, they come, they say how things have to go. So pictures and all that kind of stuff and meets and greets and autographs, that's an absolute no. Like, we don't get to do anything like that.
Oh, boo.
Yeah.
Only for family.
Only for family.
So, Dan, did you steer into that turbulence, or did it just happen?
It just happened.
That's great, man. That's great. That's really cool that we have a listener here in our audience that got to do that. Now, how many there's like when the university flies like LSU, is it team, staff, equipment? I mean, who all's on that plane?
Yeah, it's all of it.
Wow. That's a lot
all
of
the
people.
Coaches, obviously all the players. Yeah, it's a lot of people. That's why they use, depending on the size of the team, in terms of like NFL and baseball teams and hockey and whatnot. I mean, it's a lot, and equipment. Yeah. Now some equipment gets trucked. Right? I can't speak for like shoulder pads versus generators that run the whatever. Yeah, I don't even know what all equipment is that's on the side of the field, but.
So, Dan, you might not be privy to this information, but you hear when there's always a conference expansion conversation. It's how are these teams going to afford to charter a flight? Just how expensive? Do you have any idea just how expensive a single flight like that is?
No, really, I don't. I would imagine it's probably in the ballpark of whatever you think a bunch of customers pay for a full flight.
Wow.
Be in that ballpark. I mean, you can figure kind of do that math yourself, just like ticket prices in general. But yeah, that's a great question. I have no idea. I mean, it's all contracts, it's all business related expenses and all that kind of stuff. So it's all negotiated.
Wow.
Fascinating. Who do you have in this game, Dan? What's your do you have a score prediction for us?
It was 7 underdog?
Yes.
Oh, I think LSU covers.
Wow, LSU covers. I got LSU winning but not covering.
Yeah.
I forget where you were.
Yeah, I have them winning by 10, man. I have them winning by 10. I really do.
Me and Cole got the same.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Dan, are you going to be flying the team back to Baton Rouge, or is that going to be another flight team?
Nope, that'll be us.
Wow.
That's sweet, man. That's awesome. I hope that's a lot of fun. I mean, I know it for you guys, it's like a normal flight, nothing special about it. Still pretty cool to say, though, right?
Yeah, it's just cool to say. Yeah, and I mean, I do have some pictures, but they're just of like, oh, the bus just showed up, and so team bus picture or whatever. Picture of some of the flags that are that the flight attendants put up inside the plane. They also they put on the back of each seat back. There's like a thing that says like LSU on it. So stuff like that. It's kind of neat to see that. You don't see that every day.
DB, real quick before we let you go, Diesel said earlier it was disrespectful for me to say this, but I said, LSU, they demand to win. If they lose to South Carolina, will Brian Kelly be on your return flight?
No, I don't know.
I mean, come on now. I mean, they expect to win, but obviously I say that tongue in cheek. But we appreciate you, man.
Yeah, you guys too.
Good luck in the Upset Picks Challenge as well, DB. I mean, that's pretty cool. Yeah. We have some Tolos who have pretty cool jobs.
Yeah.
That's high up there.
Yeah, well, you never know who's listening to you. It could be doctors, lawyers, dignitaries, pilots, just like the full gamut of people listen to sports radio. And
plumbers.
Dan, by the way, yeah. Is that a crack? Is that some sort of crack at
a crack
plumbers?
on plumbers?
Yeah. He went with Southern Miss plus 12 against South Florida.
That
was
big spread,
his
man.
pick.
That's a big spread.
Yeah, Southern Miss blanked in their first game. I don't know what happened to them in the second game.
Man, I don't know about that. That's 12 points. Again, you've been playing this challenge a lot longer than I have.
Doesn't show because I'm still at 0.
It feels like, though, when you start getting past 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, I mean, those are, you're talking about risky business.
It's hard to hit on those.
What was yours last week? 7?
Mine,
Oklahoma State?
7.5, I think, Arkansas, Oklahoma State.
All right, which game intrigues you the most? And you can't say the Carolina Panthers because they suck. This NFL weekend, I'm going to give you some good ones. And I don't say this because I'm a Cowboys fan, but Saints-Cowboys Sunday at 1 o'clock. I'll give you that one as an option. 49ers-Vikings, they have announced that McCaffrey's out again for that game. Jaguars-Browns, 2 old Clemson former quarterbacks who both won a natty going at it. Let's see. Joe Burrow. Man, I don't know if there's another option than this, Diesel. The Joe Burrow get-right game. Is something wrong with Joe Burrow? There was an ESPN clip from an ESPN radio host that I heard the other day saying, look, sell all the stock on Joe Burrow. Bengals Chiefs 425s are a bigger game than that.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, that's it, right?
That's a really interesting game. One that interests me. Buccaneers Lions.
Yeah, it does.
Both teams 1-0.
That is a good one.
Baker looked really good in his first game of the season. The Lions potentially a team to look at as a dark horse, maybe to make the Super Bowl this year. And then, and this is not fan service. I wouldn't do this to you because I don't want to inflate your ego, but I'm interested in this Saints-Cowboys game. I really am.
No, that should be a good
Derek
game.
Carr played out of his mind again against the Carolina Panthers, who suck. But, they're 6-point dogs on the road in Dallas. I mean, that's intriguing.
It is. You know what, though? What's interesting about that game is Diesel's week 1. What do we always say? Don't judge everything just off of one. Don't make all these assumptions off of week 1 performance, right? With this, we kind of know what the Carolina Panthers are. But with the Saints,
I mean, I'm surprised they even put anything on that little ticker that says leading rusher, leading passer for the Carolina, but just don't put anything. Just put blanks.
The Saints, though, Diesel, what's so interesting about New Orleans is we don't know if they're really good like they looked last week or if they're somewhere in the middle because, again, no disrespect. Well, whatever. They played the Panthers, right? And the Panthers aren't good, so we don't know if the Saints are really good or if they're just not good and played a terrible team. I think we'll find out a better litmus test this week. As you said, Dallas is a 6-point favorite at home. I'll tell you what, man, the Saints scare me. I mean, the way they scored all those points last week, I don't know if it's phony or legit, if they're going to be a good team, but I like that one as well, 1 o'clock.
So we were talking about all of our Tolos who are doctors and lawyers and race car drivers and pilots. And we have a texter that said, is Fat Paid, says, not trying to brag, but I deliver pizza.
Oh, that's bragging. That's bragging. Sorry, Fat Paid.
Fat Paid, there's a lot of Tolos who probably take advantage of your services a lot more than they do doctors and lawyers and race car drivers. So,
but you know what, though?
You're delivering sustenance. You are a giver of life.
Fat Paid's job, pizza delivery, just as important as the airplane pilot. That's my opinion. Hey,
I mean, he delivers pizza. Dan B delivers humans.
That's right. I mean,
from place to place.
Sometimes I'd rather be in a room with pizza than humans, right?
Honestly,
I mean, you know what? I'll have to tell you this during the break because they're not a sponsor. But
and Dan B just jumps into the stream. What
delivering?
Timing?
Oh, that is good timing.
Yeah,
delivering pizza versus delivering.
Pizza versus people.
It sounds so weird when you put it that way. Real quick, Diesel hook set wants South Carolina over LSU. 7 points.
Way to go, Hookset, getting in your upset pick right by the skin of your teeth before the show is over. When we come back, Cole, we'll take another look around the sports world, see what else is happening out there. One more time with our Daily Wires. That's next. JD's trying to get Dan B arrested. He says, since you deliver humans, that makes you a human trafficker.
Oh.
Ow.
Ouch.
JD, come on.
Bounce.
Come on. Beat him straight up in the upset picks challenge. Don't kneecap him when he's not looking. It's time to take a look at our daily wires, the buzz happening in the sports world. Yeah, Tiger Woods underwent a surprise back surgery to relieve pain and spasms. It is his 6th surgery on his lower back in the last 10 years. Recovery time expected to be 8 to 12 weeks.
So this is his sixth
in a decade. Yeah.
I don't think that's like,
this is hanging
it's
out,
not
Tiger.
recommended, is it?
Like we talk
Six
about, no.
every 10 years.
The best number to have is 0.
Okay, gotcha.
Or 1. Anything more than that means you got some serious problems. Sticking with the injury bug, Christian McCaffrey will miss his 2nd straight game due to a calf injury and Achilles tendonitis. The team is now considering putting him on the IR, which would take him out for a minimum of 4 games.
Fantasy owners are livid because they spent their 1st round draft pick on that guy. I'm not kidding.
Panthers fans are looking at this and going, told you so. Bronny's first Lakers game-worn jersey in the NBA Summer League debut sold for $38,400.
That's a little ridiculous.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, honestly, I thought that was kind of low.
It does
what it's sold for.
Well,
and it's a Summer League jersey. It's not a season jersey.
$38,000.
$38,000 to own Bronny's
No, I'm good.
Sweaty jersey.
No thanks.
Jalen Hurts got engaged. How about that? Congratulations to Jalen. An internal police memo sent out to police departments in South Florida this week warned of a, quote, noticeable surge in threatening language directed at law enforcement following Tyreek Hill's traffic stop.
Not good.
No, that's not good. We spent a lot of time talking about this earlier this week. Tyreek Hill, as a matter of fact, came out in another press conference, I believe it was yesterday, and said that he realizes he could have handled things differently. He realizes that not rolling his car window down when the police officer asked him to escalated the situation. But he also said that doesn't give the cop the right to pull me out of the car and kick my ass, which both of those things are true. So I appreciate Tyreek for extending that olive branch.
Yeah, I do too. It's just hard for me. Like, in Tyreek's position, I get where he's coming from, but it's hard for me to justify that statement when he literally admitted, if I would have rolled my window down to begin with, I know we probably wouldn't even be talking about this. Like, if I shoot at you, Diesel, you're probably going to shoot. I mean, come on. Yeah, he shouldn't have drug you out, but you're the one that was being a you-know-what bag, and I can't help it that you don't want to comply.
Douche is the word you're looking for.
Well, that's a nice way, yeah.
Georgia defensive back Daniel Harris was arrested shortly before midnight last night. He's been charged with 5 misdemeanors: reckless driving, not wearing a seatbelt, operating an unregistered vehicle without a license plate, driving without proof of insurance, and having illegal window tint. What is it in Athens? Does this just not happen anywhere else, or is it Georgia is the only place anybody talks about? Like, if a Southern Miss player goes out in his fancy new car and gets pulled over, like, nobody reports on it, but everybody reports on Georgia.
I think they're out to get him now.
You think so?
I think they're just sitting there like with
it's not
radar
out to get
guns.
you if you're doing dumb things.
I know. I'm just kidding.
If you're in a blacked out Charger Hellcat and you're doing 110 down the interstate, it's not like the cops are out to get you. You're just the dumbass.
Are the Athens interstates just super open?
They just must be the sexiest looking interstates.
Straight.
Yeah.
No turns, no curves.
I'd tell you what, the roads, the highways in North Georgia, they're 2 lanes, they're separate, they're flat, they're smooth. Man, if I had a sports car, I'd be hauling ass through there.
Maybe it's the county's fault. Maybe they should start putting more like barricades and potholes.
Maybe they should just raise the speed limit so that it's not speeding anymore.
So it's not illegal.
Yeah,
that's better.
Yeah.
That's better.
Just take Woodruff Road. Imagine adjusting the speed limit on Woodruff Road to 65.
No, I'm good.
And then we wouldn't get caught speeding doing 20 over.
That'd just be 19 wrecks.
You could still do 20 over. You can still do 65. It just won't be speeding anymore.
Good.
That's Wire to Wire. Wrapping up show number 120 here on the Fan Upstate. We'll be back to do it again on Monday with show number 121.
Tolos.